All right, Bob, take it away.
All right. Thank you, John. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to our spring 2021 Northeast Maximo User Group. Really happy to have everyone here and excited about the content that we have to share together and the opportunity to grow in our use of Maximo and in our asset management techniques and just in our what we do in general. So we have a great agenda, and we want to make sure that you understand that the Northeast Maximo User Group is you. It's all of us, right? It's made up of people who are trying to do the best they can for their company, the best they can with Maximo and other asset management tools. And we're here to share our strengths and to make each other better. The origins of this is our third meeting and third virtual, as it turns out. And we were formerly the New York Mug and the New England Mug, and we merged to form the Northeast Maximo User Group. And the way we're organized, just so you understand, it's a guiding committee made up of Maximo users with the outstanding and wonderful help of JSC Associates as our lead sponsor. So we work together to put these things together, and we always welcome your input and your desire to participate. We would love to have you tell us what you want to hear. Tell us how you think this should go. So we look forward to those kind of conversations in the future, and there'll be opportunities for you to give us your feedback. And again, our sponsor support is essential. We'll talk about that more in just a second. They make this possible, and just a little bit about who you are, who is actually in attendance here, who participates in the Northeast Mug. We have some outstanding companies represented here. UPS, NASA, JFK, New York Power Authority, and on, Port Authority in New York. All kinds of businesses too. This is not just a utility user group, but it's all Maximo user groups. So really a great opportunity, a great variety of experience to benefit from. So we look forward to that. And again, sponsors are key. And we have some really great sponsors, really great companies that have supported us both financially and in many presentations, and you'll hear from some of them today. Cohesive Solutions, Interlock, Starboard Consulting, Microdesk, and Prometheus Group. So there are sponsors, and we're very grateful to them. And then our lead sponsor, our lead facilitator is JFC and Associates. John Gould driving the ship right now for us, and John Cannell, the CEO, and Michael Nutt, also now with JFC, all really great help, and this wouldn't be possible without them at all. So thank you very much to them. So what are we here for? What do we want to accomplish? Well, we want to promote ideas, grow. We want to ask questions. We want to find out. We want to tell each other what we need. And inevitably, when you bring up a question, there's 5 people who aren't speaking, aren't on the screen, aren't typing in the chat, who say, yeah, I needed to know that too. That's because we all have some very similar experiences. So please don't hesitate to tell everyone else what you're looking for, or tell everyone else what you learned that you thought would be great to share. So we're here to promote improvement. Learn about Maximo functionality. We're going to hear about Maximo 8, which is on the horizon, near horizon today. I want to learn about asset management and better ways to run our asset management program, make good connections, get to know one another, and hopefully enable us to reach out to others for help in the future. So what can you as a member of the Northeast Mug do to make this all work better? Well, can you present? Don't be shy. Don't think that what you have isn't valuable. It is, I guarantee it. So your Maximo experience is something everyone else can benefit from. So think about, if you're not presenting today, and thank you very much to those who are, but think about what you might be able to share with others about your Maximo experience, about your asset management experience, mobility, lots of great topics that we need to discuss. Even here, you know, your questions, as I mentioned, are very important. Your experiences. To do that, by the way, use the chat. On the lower right-hand side of your screen near the bottom, you'll see a little chat button. Click that and enter your questions or comments there, and they will be fielded by one of the folks from JFC who is helping us to run the meeting, and then we'll have the presenters answer your questions. And then also something we're doing for this meeting for the first time, which I look forward to seeing how this works out, I think it should work very well, is doing a poll before each of the presenter sessions. So we get a sense of what the audience is specifically interested in relative to the topic we're about to enjoy. So watch for those polls. Please respond to them promptly. And that way presenters will have an even better sense of where to focus their attention. So those are the things we're going to try to accomplish today, each of us. And next slide. So here's our agenda for the day. Welcome, everyone. Thank you again for being here. There's no such thing as a mug without mug members. So thank you for coming, and thank you for everyone who's presenting. So we'll hear about the future of mobility at the New York Power Authority. We'll hear about the road ahead with Maximo, the Maximo Application Suite 8.0, reliability web message, and the Maximo world, and a break. So we'll have a video about reliability web and the Maximo world coming up at just before and during break time. And then supporting Massport's call center with Maximo. So looking forward to that presentation. And then our last presentation will be a panel discussion about Maximo upgrades and lessons learned. So that should certainly be interesting, something that everybody has to experience and has experienced many times for many of us. So a great opportunity to try to learn from others' pain so that we can do a better job next time. Then we'll close and go. So that's our agenda for the day. So our first presenter then will be George Perry and Ilya Yermolenko from New York Power Authority, and they're going to tell us about the future of mobility at New York Power Authority at Naipa. George and Ilya, take it away.
But first, our first poll.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. So you'll see on your screen our first question that has come up with regards to mobility. And this is a multiple choice. So we use mobility in the field to perform. How are you using mobility out in the field? So are you doing inspections in the warehouse, managing your items? Are you out in the field doing your PMs, maybe creating work orders out in the field on your mobile devices? Or heck no, we're not using anything. We don't use that kind of newfangled technology. So as soon as we get to a critical point here, John will take this down and we'll see the results.
We got down 5 seconds, Mike.
And 3, and 2, and 1. We've got a bit of response here. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. You want to speak to it?
No, go ahead, Bob.
So it looks like so 2, 6. So preventative maintenance is number 1, but followed closely by inspections, corrective maintenance, and I'll be honest, personally, I wanted to check 3 of these because we do 3 of these things with mobility, and then we see
you could have, I think.
Oh, really? I tried. It wouldn't let me, but we'll see about that. Technology, always fun. So yeah, so PMs is the lead there. and we'll see what they're doing at Naipa as we hear from George and Ilya. So,
Good
okay,
morning, and
guys.
can everyone hear me?
George.
Hello?
Can you hear you?
Great.
Yes, we can, George.
Oh, thank you. Good morning and welcome. I'd like to thank you all for attending our third virtual meeting. I think that I can speak for all of us when I say that I'm looking forward to a time in the not too distant future when we can all meet in person again. If you were fortunate enough to catch it last year, my colleagues Sarisha Boye and Ilya Yermolenko offered a presentation entitled Mobile for Maximo, Untethering the Digital Workforce. I am fortunate to be with my colleague Ilya to present what I see as the next iteration of that presentation. Today we'll talk about what the future of mobility at Naipa looks like. Speaking of the future, I remember as a boy thinking of the future as something along the lines of Tomorrowland at Disney or the Jetsons. Today's future looks something along the lines of a New York minute, which is to say not long at all. What that means is that it seems like we just get caught up to the point where we thought the future was, only to realize that it's already in the past. Things change at blinding speed, and right now, somewhere, someone is working on something that is literally miles ahead of where we are right this very second. Before we start talking about mobility, I thought I'd share with you a little about Naipa, who we are, and what we do. Next slide, please, John. So Naipa stands for New York Power Authority. We are the nation's largest state-owned public power organization, but we are much, much more than that. We lower your electric bill every month by providing some of the lowest cost electricity in New York. We are innovators as we work to find new, cost-effective, efficient ways to not only generate that electricity, but to conserve it as well. And as hard as we work to develop this technology, we work just as hard to bring it to market at a price you can afford. We celebrate 90 years in 2021, 90 years of bringing you our absolute best. I think we got to back up a slide, perhaps. One more. There we are, thank you. Our mission is simple. Power the economic growth and competitiveness of New York State. You may be wondering, how does an electric utility accomplish that exactly? The answer is in many, many ways. For starters, we provide low-cost wholesale electricity to businesses throughout the state. The same low-cost energy that reduces your electric bill reduces expenses for business, allowing them to hire more of your fellow New Yorkers. We also produce cost savings through many programs like our LED streetlight program that makes lighting the street cost less while making it more reliable. We fund recreational activity all across the state, from the majestic Niagara Falls to the New York State Canal System, right down to a park near you. You'll see us at the New York State Fair, where we will be promoting everything from energy efficiency to electric vehicles and more. You'll see us all across the state because this is our state and we aim to see it flourish. We operate 16 generating facilities and 1,400 circuit miles of transmission lines, and we plan to add more. Why, you may ask? The answer is simple. Because New Yorkers demand that we continue to develop better, more efficient, and environmentally friendly ways to deliver the electricity they need and the economic development they want. If you're wondering what that looks like, let's take a look. We're good right there on that slide, John. Thank you. You can see the thick blue lines in our map of New York State. They represent the backbone of the state power grid, as well as connecting points that give us the ability to import more low-cost power from other regions and Canada. There's the St. Lawrence FDR Power Project right at the top there. This is a shared hydro generating facility with Canada that was constructed in the 50s on the St. Lawrence Seaway. Online in 1958, It generates 912 megawatts of electricity. Next down from that is the Clark Energy Center. It is the hub of the majority of the transmission lines that carry electricity from western and northern New York down to the metro New York City area. It is also home to Naipa's System Operations Group. Blenheim Gilboa is a pump storage hydro plant located in the Catskills. Online in 1973, it is capable of producing 1,160 megawatts of peak power. The Niagara Power project is actually two power plants connected as one. There is the Robert Moses Hydro Plant and the Lewiston Pump Storage Generating Plant. Online in 1961, this was the largest hydropower project in the world when it was constructed. Today, combined, they produce over 2,900 megawatts. And incidentally, I share the same vintage with them. The Flint Power Project is located in Oatsville, Long Island, and is a gas turbine generator. It is capable of generating 150 megawatts. And the last of Naipa's major generating facilities is Plant Zeltman, a 500 megawatt combined cycle gas turbine generator located in Astoria, Queens. Next slide, please. Over 80% of the electricity that Naipa generates is clean, reliable, renewable hydropower. That is something that each of us stands behind every day. We want to be environmentally responsible. After all, we live here too. Environmental responsibility is something that we take great pride in and something that we carry out each and every day. Next slide, please. Speaking of responsibility, at Naipa, we aim to be responsible stewards of all of the assets that have been placed in our care. We work hard, are well informed, and recognize the importance of making smart business decisions. We pride ourselves in getting the right information to the right people at the right time for informed decision making. To that end, Naipa was recognized as the first electric utility in North America to meet all of the requirements to be certified under ISO 55001. We are also proud members of the Institute of Asset Management, a worldwide organization driving asset management principles and practices. Next slide, please. Among our many lofty goals is to become the first truly end-to-end digital utility. This is something we have years invested in and something that, in the end, we believe will bring great value to us and our many business partners. Next slide, please. And that gets us to mobility. How important is mobility? I think you can answer that by asking yourself, what would you do if you lost the use of your cell phone? Many of us conduct more business on our cell phones than we do on our desk phones. And if you want to talk about our personal lives, how many of us even have a house phone anymore? Now think about the company you work for. Think about what work was like at the beginning of your career. Mine, almost 40 years ago now, and compared to what it's like today. Remember what I said at the beginning of this presentation about the Jetsons and the New York Minute? You don't have to think back 40 years or even 20. How about 5? What did the mobile environment look like 5 years ago? And what will it look like 5 years from now? We think that mobility will make more things possible than we ever thought imaginable. And judging by what we believe will happen at Naipa over the next 18 months, that may just be true. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you my colleague, Ilya Yermolenko. Ilya has been responsible for implementing our mobile program from the start. No one knows it like he does, and I'm excited to hear what he has to share with us today. Ilya?
Thank you, George. Thank you very much for this introduction. I'm going to start with one sentence that was recently mentioned by my director and George as recently as a couple of minutes ago, and I really, really like it, and we'll be using it from now on. George and I work in an asset information group, which is part of a larger APM effort, which strives to get the right information to the right people at the right time, get the right technology to support short-term operations and long-term decision-making. We, Naipa, have been using mobile technology We're getting data captured in the field for over 15 years. We upgraded our mobile company over 3 years ago, and have been using and expanding it beyond the use of operations ever since. Data captured in the field can be measurement. Operators are using handheld devices to capture data in the field with the various points. And you can stay on this slide, that's fine. Various points captured are being temperature, run times, tank levels, oil levels, gauge readings. To more complex calculations or preset values to be chosen from a predefined list. Not only is the data being captured by our operations department, but we're also capturing data by our line crew and vegetation management. We have also brought to the sites that were reluctant to use the mobile solution mobility. Not surprisingly, they're not only using it, but also at the forefront of creating forms that could be used by other sites. Throughout this whole process, our hardware went through a big cycle as well. We went from the Motorola devices, usually called bricks, that you see in Target or Walmart's, to a smaller device, which in turn had smaller screen and smaller keyboards that the operators were not happy with, to the use of some of the latest technology available in the market right now. The use of proper hardware helps us capture the data collected in extreme weather conditions, such as George mentioned, way up north in the cold weather when it goes below zero. By utilizing systems for all data capturing, we can easily share this information with other departments as soon as the data is synchronized. This data can then be transferred to Maximo and be used by other departments. The data collected in the field is very important, not just for operations department, for their day-to-day activity, but is also can be used for historical values and training of the charts. This data is shared between various departments to create a work order. The process has been greatly improved to improve the time spent on creating work orders that has been approved by multiple departments. For example, when creating a work order for removing a danger tree, vegetation management, 3 departments have to work simultaneously together to create that work order. However, they do have all the information at their fingertips, which they do at this time. Current mobile applications, we currently have line patrol, operator rounds, dam inspections, safety and security rounds for our company. Let's break them down one by one and talk more about it in details. Line patrol is a crew that goes out into the field to inspect our transmission lines, structures, and danger trees such as vegetation management. All work orders are entered into data splice and then transferred into Maximo. This means that the ease of access by all departments, as mentioned in the previous slide, real estate, foresters, planners, all have the information at their fingertips. Everyone sees the same information. It speeds up the communication process and the work order creation. It eliminates any miscommunications and any misinformation because the same information everybody has. For the transmission, we are currently inspecting the structures and spans. There are 7 meters that we have attached to each of the structures and 4 meters for each of the spans. For the ease of use of the program and to speed up the process, not hold up anybody working on inspecting their structures, we created the meters with a simple pass or fail. This speeds up the process. For the vegetation management, we utilize a LiDAR technology which identifies the danger trees, and we fly this every 4 years throughout all of our sites and transmission lines. Danger tree can also be identified by a line crew in the field. All the values captured in the field then being transferred into Maximo. The operator rounds. The inspections are performed at various intervals at each of the sites. Some sites make it daily, twice a day, weekly, monthly, could be biannual, any time interval that can set up for performing an inspection. Within an inspection, we set up limits and alarms. And if the operator enters a value which is out of those limits or alarms, a message is displayed for operators, and they can log in the issues, or they can create a work order, any pictures, and then once the information is synchronized, it also goes into Maximo. Work orders are created during the inspections. There's a work order created on a specific asset. That work order history would notify the operator if there's any duplicates or work orders that has been created on that asset. That eliminates the duplicate entries. We also have work orders created from PMs at some sites. That means that we have job plans identified that attached to the PMs, and from the PMs, the work orders are generated. The site is completely paperless now. No more printing of the work orders to give to the crew to go out into the field. Not only does this save the paper, the funding, but it also saves the environment by not printing a lot of paper to give to the crew. Not all of that done through the handheld devices. Completed procedure report is attached to the work order that can be viewed by anyone once the inspection is complete. There's also historical data and trending are available at the fingertips of operators or planners or supervisors. A little bit about the reports. The reports are generated on a daily basis. They can be reports of completed procedures, alarm reports, or runtime hours. Okay. Other aspects that we use is dam inspections, safety, and security. We also use the QR codes. Scanning for the codes helps us identify the assets in the field. There's a two-way that we're using the QR codes at the current state. One would be if an operator within the inspection scans the asset tag, then that question would show up on that piece of on the handheld device. If this asset scan is scanned within an asset search, that all asset pertinent information would show up on the screen. If the operator or planner or anyone with access to the application is walking around Naipa and is connected to Naipa site, Naipa network, they have the rights to update asset information. Again, from their handheld device. For the dam inspections, it's a visual inspections that are done with information logged in again on a piece. It used to be logged in on a piece of paper. Now it's all done on an iPad. For environmental, we used inspections such for emissions, any leakage in the water release in the river, temperature, chemical levels of releases, any gases released into the air. For the safety, we have 80 devices and some inspections. We are going to expand it to other fields such as fire protection, fire extinguishers, and exit lights. For facilities, we're using the forms. We're using mobile solutions for the building maintenance and building grounds inspections. For security, we're currently using it for perimeter site walkthrough, any doors and alarms, and badging of locks. Next slide, please. Fleet operations. We recently brought fleet management into Maximo. Our next step would be to bring them to the use of mobile solution. We would be able to track down any motor pool vehicle at any time and see their services. A reservation can also be made using a mobile device to either reserve the service vehicle to travel to a job site or to make a reservation pool to use a carpool by anyone allowed to do so. This allows for the ease of picking up and dropping of the fleet vehicles by simply completing any reservation form that is tied to Maximo. By submitting a form electronically, we again eliminate the process of manual data entry and any mistakes that can happen during interpretation of someone's handwriting. Sorry. My apologies. Sorry about that. Here, again, we can eliminate the process of printing a motor pool reservation form and submitting it at the end of the trip. Our next step would be to implement the use of the QR codes on the vehicles. Once scanned, an employee would be able to identify the vehicle, if that is correct. using the correct vehicle code. The completion of the trip, they would simply submit a form electronically. Next slide, please. Thank you. Ppm Standard Forms. There are 11 asset classes that have been identified for this initiative. First, what is APM and how does it help Naipa? For those not in the know of what APM stands for, it stands for Asset Performance Management. We at Naipa are very big on data and analytics. Asset performance to us means the data is unified, resilient, and optimized. It all starts at the beginning, which is data collection. There are multiple sources of data for this. We have work orders and asset data, asset conditioning coming from PI and mobile from Maximo, also from transmission oil analysis and other means. The forms for the operators have a preset value that only has one-to-one relationship with key points in APM. The forms are created in central location and then distributed to all other sites. This gives us a more consistent data across all of the sites. All of the questions are consistent at all times. This also helps us in making the forms the same throughout our organization. Once the data is captured and transferred from the field, we can then use the APM technology to do analytics. We can use the data to peer benchmarking of asset performance, asset criticality analysis, failure modes, and effect analysis, lifecycle management, and asset strategy management, to say the least. We can also use it for consolidating condition information for monitoring asset health. After performing these analyses, we then can enable our people to make better work plans, monthly planning meetings, and outages. For plant operations, the data will be used for reliability, availability, and capital operation and maintenance work. This would in turn prolong our life cycle of our assets. This would help us in the performance of an asset, cost effectiveness, and risk management. Next slide, please. Niagara Fire Extinguisher Pilot. Fire extinguisher rounds, fire extinguisher QR tags. The project that started because someone from security department heard that there is a mobile application that is being used by operation department that can be used by security guards for their inspections as well. Before, just like anywhere else, they had to print out their work orders, get a pen, go out into the field and conduct their inspections. Well, there was a little of a problem that some of the login issues showed that the operators were not at the location what they said they were. There was no accountability if the security personnel were not at the physical location. With the implementation of the QR codes, this forced them to scan the code. Once scanned, all the questions for a specific extinguisher or asset would come up. By scanning the code and answering the questions, this logs them as physically being at this specific location. The way that we did this is we converted the Word document that was sent over to us by security team. The form was converted to electronic form. We also conducted multiple trainings at the site to teach the super users how to use the software, how to use the hardware, since this was the very first time they ever saw this initiative. We had to teach them how to use all of the devices in the field that they currently have are iPad, iPhone, and the Zebra tablet. They then showed how to use the form with their guards. So it was basically kind of sort of train the trainer. At the beginning of the form, we also made sure that we give them a pre-work explanation of what kind of points are being asked in the form for each of the assets. They must acknowledge that they read the instructions and understood them. Just like with operator rounds, if there's something wrong, they have an option of making a note of what is wrong and noting it within the application. This information is then passed to the supervisor and is also available for planners for creating additional work orders. Our piloting program started small, however, in the small building, but now that the pilot has been complete and we're happy with this, we're going to expand it to bigger buildings and bigger crews. We're ready to move forward with expanding to a larger location and include more assets. Next slide, please. the QR code deployment program. QR coding started a couple of years ago and is still in the ongoing process. For anyone that doesn't know what QR stands for, QR stands for a quick response. This was developed in Japan many years ago to track their vehicles. However, we are using it for a totally different perspective. It's a code that can be programmed with a lot of information, but we're using it for minimal information. For our use, we simply have a minimal information on the code. However, the tag does show the asset number, description, and location of an asset. One of the reasons why we started using the QR codes is because there was a misidentification of an asset. For example, is it a reactor or is it a transformer? Is it a GSU? Is it an outer or is it a power transformer? The oil samples that were sent to the testing facility, and the information that we were receiving back did not match the information or the assets that were sent. So the information that went to the facilities came back to us with wrong asset numbers, and vice versa. Test results were the wrong, and we had to work on the double assets, and we couldn't identify it. Why would this was happening? Well, finally we identified that this was a misinformation or misprint on the piece of paper. By utilizing the QR codes, this completely goes away. It's 100%. And again, the use of QR code is only as good as the person that programmed it in the beginning. Also, it eliminates any human errors, misidentification of the asset in the field. Information is also displayed on the handheld device. It reduces the time operators, planners spend time for searching for an asset if they're in the field. Another use within the form is once the operator scans the code, it will take them to the appropriate question for a specific asset. This means they don't have to follow a preset route and can move freely within an inspection. This sometimes can actually save money by shortening the time an operator spends collecting data in the field. Another use of the QR codes is that anyone with the right information to the mobile application can view an asset information. The information, once the code is scanned, the asset information displayed is asset number, asset description, asset location, classification, model number, serial number, vendor, manufacturer, to name the few. Additional information can also be found, and that would specify any specifications, meters, work history, backlog, and any attachments and spare part. Next slide, please. Our environmental and health and safety. As mentioned in the previous slide, we're expanding the use of mobile solution to our organization. Another aspect of expansion is the use of environmental health and safety department. We currently have the forms for monthly AD device inspections. We're looking to expand it to more uses. We're looking to use this for our fire safety inspections, first aid equipment. We already have one form for extinguishers, but this is not the last one. I'm very sure of this. Next slide, please. The time and attendance solution. Recently, we have looked into implementing company-wide, not just for the operations, line patrol, or security. Another possible and future way of utilizing mobile solution is to capture hours spent in the field on a work order by any crew. This means that the crew would be allowed to start a job in the mobile software, indicating the start of a job, and finish it. Once they are done working on a specific unit or perform an inspection, then they can click on the stop work button, and the hours are automatically calculated into Maximo, transferred into Maximo, and labor is calculated. Slide, please. Expanding mobile environment to like New York State canals. This is a project that we're going to undertake in the near future. We're going to expand this use of mobile solution corporation in the next year. We will also be able to use the QR code technology the same way that we use it for tracking assets and fleet management. Next slide, please. And we are currently using the 5.1 version of Prometheus software. Our plan is to upgrade to the version 6 in the very near future. And by upgrading to the version 6, Naipa will gain the capability to extend its platform and to other crews, and we will be able to bring other departments to the mobile solution. With this, I thank you. Next slide, please. I thank you very much for your attention. And thank you. Next slide, please.
That's all we got, Ilya.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah. Any questions for us?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, Bob had asked a question for you guys. Do you have any plans to use mobile or QR codes for lockout, tagout?
Yeah, I could take that. We are in the discussion stage. We do recognize the capability of using those QR codes, especially when carrying out switching orders, to ensure that people are on the right device before we switch it. It's just an extra check and balance that can help us to keep all of our personnel as safe as possible. So yes, it's in the discussion stage.
And Bob followed up on that with, can you talk a little bit about your tagging process? So do you print your tags in-house? Any information on how you install them, or do field validation, things like that for those QR codes that you talked about?
Sure. George, if you'd like, I can take this one.
Yes, please.
We have a central location that we print all the tags, so this gives us a more control over what information goes on the tag. The sites, they request the tags, but they identify the assets that they would like to tag first. Then they send us the information with the asset. They send us the asset information. We would then convert it to the printing format, print the QR code tags in-house, and ship it over to the site. Once the site receives it, it is up to the site to attach the tag in the safest manner possible and make sure that it is visible. The information that we have on the tag is simply the code that is, the information that is printed on the code is simply just the asset number. That's it. We're not giving any information out. We're not putting any more additional information on the tag. But once the tag is scanned in the proper field with the proper software, all the asset information is readily available at your fingertips. And for the attachment, we use the double-sided tape. On some equipment, we use the airplane wires, airplane wire tags. For other assets, it's completely up to the site.
So you guys have done quite a bit with mobile there. If you are, talking to users who are at this event here, if there's a lesson learned you could give them for kind of getting started in this, kind of what would be your advice that you wish you kind of knew before you got started?
Take your time and make sure you document everything that happens. And also believe it or not, include the crew. Ask their opinions. Ask what is it that they want to see, and make sure that you go through the whole process with the company of approving this the new initiative. It's a big undertaking.
And I'll add to that just a little bit. I think that's an extremely important thing that Ilya just said there about including the workforce or including the craft in these decisions. Sometimes we tend to make decisions in a vacuum, and we get sometimes pretty far down the road before we realize that either we went way too far to try and accomplish something that was really quite simple, or we implemented a plan that really didn't take the crew's views into consideration, and then we wind up having to redo it. So a very important point. Thank you, Ilya.
Another good question. That's always comes up with any implementations with mobility. Any advice, Bob asked, any advice you have around working with your IT groups when it comes to implementing mobile?
In at Naipa, our IT, we're very close working with our IT department. It's imperative you have a very good in order for you to streamline the process, and it's always good to have IT department in good standings, so that way you can any questions or any problems that arise, they will be able to help you out with that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate your insights into what's going on at Naipa. And if we have any other questions, folks, just feel free to enter in the chat as stuff comes up. And anything that's not answered today, we'll look to get you information. Actually, we just got a late question here. What type of mobile devices are you using, and are they shared? That's a good question.
Okay, this is a multiple part question. We recently at Naipa gave iPhones to all of our crew in the field. Before this, and we're testing it out. We're testing it out in order for us to make sure that it's compatible, it's safe, and it's Naipa compliant, and it's secure in order for us to use in the field. Prior to the iPhones, we used the mobile devices such as iPad mini, and they were pull devices. We're also currently distributed a Zebra tablet, which is also a pull device. So it's a hybrid of pull devices and the personal phones that has been issued by our company. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Do you guys allow those devices to have other applications for work use installed? Is there anything else that those folks can use? Obviously, it's an iPhone, so it can certainly do a lot, but are there any standard applications that you install maybe alongside of Data Splice to help your workforce out?
Sure, and that's a great question. Previously, when there was just the pull devices for the iPads, we locked it down. We did not want our operators to search the web or anything like this. So this was strictly a pull device for taking data measurements in the field. So we did lock it down. However, with the new security that's coming out and the Zebra tablets that is Windows operating system, we did unlock a lot of applications. They can use Office 365 now. They do have the mail, and they have capability of Teams, Microsoft software installed on their Zebra devices.
Also, during the pandemic, we recognized the need to be able to communicate with our entire workforce at all times. So our CEO, Gil Quinones, took the unprecedented step of ensuring that each and every employee was outfitted with an iPhone. So we could get emergency messages to them if we needed to. They can check their company email and such.
Do you have any feedback from the field staff, guys, on, we talk about iPhones, right? Just aging workforce, let's just call it that, just the readability on the screens, anything like that. Have you had to do anything with extending out like accessibility settings to, zoom in on things or change how things are presented on your screens when you did your rollout?
So prior to giving the workforce any handheld devices, what we did is we did a tour, and what happened is we put out the iPhone. Before it was iPhone 6 Plus. We put iPad Mini next to that, and then we'll put iPad Air 2. And with all these three devices, we gave the choice to the operators and anybody within the company that they were going to use it. What would they choose? Everybody chose, believe it or not, iPad Mini, and this is the device that we have been using. However, some of the sites did choose iPhone 6 Plus because it did have it had the smaller screen and was more portable. Currently, the feedback is, like you said, John, some of the people like iPhones, some of the people like the iPads, some of the people, believe it or not, like the Zebras even better because they have the larger screen. But we did get a couple of comments that the phones that were distributed to the field crew as the personal phones by Naipa are a little bit smaller, and they would like to get something big, something of a bigger size in order for them to perform inspections and not schlep with a large device such as Zebra around.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. It's a great way that you guys, another way to engage your field staff, right? To see what tool, right? Because this is what this is, works best for them, right? So not just deploying one solution and hoping it works for everyone. So that's really great. Another question kind of relative around the devices themselves and kind of device management. How do you guys handle keeping them charged, up to date on the latest like software patches and iOS updates? Are you guys using any sort of MDM type platform to manage and control these devices?
Well, we did have the software Mass 360 installed on all of the iPads, and we were using it before. However, recently we moved to Duo, and we are working with updating our iPads into Duo softwares and wrapping up the security certificates. So that, and once we convert it to the Duo, we will be able to update iPads through our IT department and manage it wirelessly and keeping up to date. We have an IT department that lets us know once the iOS device is ready, iOS system is Naipa secured and approved, we can then update the iPads or iPhones.
Great. Yeah, with all that's gone on in the news recently with the ransomware attacks on the pipeline and understanding device security being a really important thing. That's good that you guys got something in place. That's awesome. I would expect nothing less from the folks at Naipa. All right. Any last questions before we kind of transition here? All right. Well, thank you very much, George and Ilya, for your presentation this morning. Very interesting. And as I said before, if there's any questions folks have that they'd like to direct, you can use the chat. You can actually chat directly to George and Ilya if you have questions for them, or you can send a chat message to the group and we'll look to get an answer for you. So, all right. With that, I think we're going to move on. Michael, if you want to kind of tee us off here, I'm going to fire up our next poll question for today.
Great. Thanks, John. So our second poll question for the day, and we're going to have Kim coming up talking a little bit about Maximo. So what version of Maximo are you currently using? So are you using 7.6.0 or earlier? Extending 7.6.0 is going to be sunsetting this September. But are you happy with it, or that earlier version, and you're not looking at moving away? Or are you using 7.6.0 and looking to upgrade? Or perhaps 7.6.1, current version, and you're very happy with it? Or are you looking to move to manage within the application suite? Or are you one of the early adopters and are already there, which I would be very impressed.
A couple more seconds here. We got pretty good participation here.
Excellent.
Some very interesting answers. So
we like good participation.
I'm gonna share this, and all the folks on IBM that are on the call today, probably jotting this one down real quick. So Mike, want to speak to those results, or Bob?
Look at that. So nobody on 7.6.0 or earlier, interesting, that are happy with it. There are a few that are still on the older versions, looking to upgrade. In the lead by far, folks using 7.6.1 and are happy with it. A couple of people looking to upgrade to application suite. Excellent. And nobody yet, at least on this call, using manage on the application suite. Oh, there's room for improvement.
I'm surprised nobody is on 7.6.0 or earlier. Usually, we run into people who are, just can't upgrade yet, and then and so many on 761. Well, 9 out of 55, but that being the lead.
Well, there could be a few of those in that 36 that didn't answer that were just a little too embarrassed to say that we're still using version 5.
Believe me, if it's avoiding an upgrade, I can see where they're coming from. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for answering.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone for your input and letting us know what's going on out there. And so now we're going to get some very important information from a very happy to have this presenter, Kim Woodbury from IBM, is going to tell us about the road ahead with Maximo and Maximo Application Suite 8.0. So Kim, please.
Thank you very much. I'm back just in time. I just had one of those technical, the machine decided it was time to go through a reboot. So I'm glad to be here. If I haven't met you, I'm sure I've met many of you, not only through the New England user group, but others. Kim Woodbury, product manager for Maximo out of the Northeast, out of the Littleton, actually soon to be Lowell office of IBM. And I have been doing this presentation to share with everyone what we're planning for Maximo Application Suite 8. So hopefully, if you haven't heard this before, or if you had, maybe you can pick up on something new. I think the more we talk about it, the more comfortable everyone is, and the more we can answer people's questions and share what the plans are with this, exciting new way that we're delivering the capabilities around Maximo. So next slide, I think we have a disclaimer, so we can just breeze through. Of course, there's some roadmap items and some futures, and dates may change as plans adjust as we are in our agile world. Next slide. So the application suite. So this is really a new way of thinking about how we deliver the capabilities for what is EAM, the Maximo Asset Management capabilities that we've delivered for many years through the Maximo that we all know and love, as well as bringing to you additional capabilities, additional adjacent complementary capabilities that are maybe under the APM or asset performance management umbrella, all under this new header, this new part number of the Maximo Application Suite. The first release was last June, and we continue to deliver quarterly updates, which all lead up to this mid-May release. It's coming in another week or so, where we will be delivering Manage, or what we now know as Manage, which was the EAM portion of the portfolio under that Application Suite umbrella. So next slide. So what are all the products that are under the application suite? So we talk about being able to now provide all of these solutions that can help better your asset management practices, starting with Manage in the bottom left, as I said, which is known, as the current EAM. And that includes all of our industry solutions and add-ons, things, the oil and gas, transportation, things like HS&E, scheduling, are all part of the under that umbrella, I'll say, of Manage. But we wanted to also deliver what we had been working on across the portfolio, things like Monitor. So being able to get real-time information from your assets, important to understand when there are anomalies, and being able to apply some of the intelligence to be able to detect and look at multi-factor anomalies when it comes to an asset. So condition monitoring on steroid, right? So just being able to say not the temperature is high or low outside of a preset threshold, or that the vibration is high or low, but it's a combination of those things that now should trigger some kind of an alert through a configurable dashboard with Monitor that can then create an action that I need to go and push back into Manage, right? So we're connecting all of these tools. Now that I understand that there's something that needs to be addressed, I can create the work order and tie back into the work history as I'm making those assessments. There's also tools with visual inspection. Oh, sorry, he went back. That's okay, I'll keep going. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on this slide. This is where I, gonna describe each of these components, and then we'll get into sort of the other benefits. But visual inspection is also a technology-driven, AI-infused capability where I can look at images that I've captured, digitally, and trained this model to understand when something is in good repair or not. And so, again, automating, taking out some of the either manual process or maybe even a fault that can't be detected by the human eye if I'm looking at it. So being able to do that comparison and again, drive change, drive action that says, based on this inspection, I need to replace a part or change my maintenance schedule to better monitor the progression of this fault. Right, so there's lots of examples of even automating the way that you collect that information. So we talk about, images, taking photos with a mobile device. We have different examples of people starting to use drones for remote areas, if possible. And even recently, we started talking with the robotics company about using the little spot dog robots to go out and collect images and do these kinds of inspections. So, back to a comment from earlier, right? You think that you're caught up with technology and you find out you're already behind. And so driving along this journey, we talk about health, and Asset Health Insights has been an offering and under that APM umbrella that has been around for several years, and as part of the simplification and the reimagination of this application suite, you'll see the simplification of some of the naming, and we kind of fall into that IBM trap of some of our product names could be paragraphs long and not really sure what the capability is. So we're trying to get very pointed here. And health is about now understanding the portfolio of assets. So whereas I might be monitoring that portfolio and identifying individual faults, I now want to have a formulation of a scoring that can be used across an asset class. So when I have to do some budgeting decisions, when I want to look at that whole fleet of assets and make some repair or replace decisions, I'm able to do that quantitatively, right? I have the data to support my decisions about where I want to spend my money that is always in short supply, right? So making sure that the most critical assets, that the assets that are most likely to fail are the ones that are getting the most attention. And that's also now taking us up to predict. So you'll start to see that the health and predict interfaces and the way that you interact with the tools from the perspective of those two applications are very intertwined. And that looking at your days to failure as part of the prediction model is very close to, the other health scoring information as well, alongside of my work history and the real-time data that I've gotten from Monitor and the inspection results that are all feeding into that, right? So we've got this holistic view and the centralized information about this asset that can be shared across these processes and across probably a couple of different roles within your organization. And of course, all of this is supported with mobile, and mobility is, continuing to be an important part of capturing accurate data and enabling our technicians to continue to maintain these assets and perform the work that needs to be done and capture the operating information and the inspection data accurately. So I will just say on Predict, that this is a journey, and we don't expect everyone to take the application suite and install all of these components on day one. Of course, that's possible, but it's also possible to just use Manage the way you're doing it today, and then start to explore some of these other areas and add these capabilities in as they make sense for your organization and your needs. And things like Predict actually require a lot of data and quality data to provide very accurate predictions. And so I hear 3 years of good failure data is required for that tool to be very useful and accurate. And so it's good for you to understand today what those models look like, and am I collecting the right kind of data to support those models in the future if that's where I want to go. The last thing I'll mention on this slide is the Digital Twin Exchange. This is a live link, so when you get the materials, and you can easily Google the IBM Digital Twin Exchange is a live marketplace, and we're encouraging vendors, manufacturers, and encouraging our customers to ask their manufacturers to provide digitized information about the assets that they support, that they either manufacture themselves and provide to you if they're specialized equipment, but you can get things like operators manuals, job plans, digital images, BIM models. All of that information then can be shared and downloaded directly into your Manage or EAM, your Maximo asset record. So now we have that single source of truth and lots of quality data to help support all of these processes. Okay, next slide. All right, so just again to make sure I'm emphasizing, what Manage includes, right? So this is the entire Maximo portfolio, the EAM portfolio as it is today. And you can see the transportation, aviation, oil and gas, there's nuclear and utilities, why we did the wording that way, and then the newest, the most recently released civil infrastructure industry solution, as well as all of the add-ons. So we talk about HSC and ACM and service provider and scheduler, which has its own box on this slide. There's a lot of investment going on in that space, so just something to keep an eye on as we, I'll talk a little bit about the new mobile application framework and delivering continuing to deliver role-based applications on an updated framework. And so scheduler is the next area that we're looking at to deliver some of those new interfaces. The other ones, let's see, we didn't mention on the other, so mobile and assist. So I'll spend some time there's like 2 slides on the new, as I said, mobile applications and that framework, and then the assist and collaboration capabilities, where again, bringing in some AI and intelligence to get those technicians the information that they need in the field directly on their devices, rather than having to go back and look up documentation or other information to support their mission, as well as safety. So on the far right there, there's a solution with IoT technology where we're monitoring I'll say the health of your workers, right? So this is being able to set up those condition monitoring points based on wearables. So the sensors that might be on their protective gear, or even, on their phone as far as their location, and, their body temperature, heart rate, if they've fallen, if they are following new safety guidelines, if they're wearing the right protective gear in the right situation, based on some fencing, that they're in an area that requires a hard hat, etc. So just another one of the solutions that's part of the suite and available through the same license. And I think we'll get to that maybe in the next slide, if I'm remembering my sequence. Oh, almost. So The simplification, I talked about the naming, and I think I described some of the benefits of the integration work that's going on to allow for exchange of data and, single definitions of those assets and their plans that can be shared and accessed across the system. There is also work on a design pattern. So we'll talk about the UI improvements and making sure that those users have a consistent experience as they navigate between the different applications as they're going through those processes. And that's not just a Maximo statement, that's an IBM statement. So any product that you use within the IBM family will follow the same kinds of design patterns when it comes to navigation, look and feel. We are also using a new metric for licenses. So when we talk about the usage flexibility, this is a concurrent model using what we call application points or app points. And so you will procure a pool of application points that are used to access the different components within the application suite. When a user logs in, based on their security profile, it'll consume a number of app points and then return them to the pool when they log out. And so there is a sharing that's available there, and we can help determine how many points make sense for the usage within your organization. And then the last thing is really around the technology. And this one seems to be the biggest kind of change. It's, reminiscent of when we went from client server to Java, and, even more so with, having to shift our thinking when it comes to what we need to do from a hardware and operating systems and how integrations are going to work. And there are some changes there, but there are also a lot of improvements and a lot of benefits that we will see by being able to use the OpenShift, Red Hat OpenShift containerization technology, which is available as part of the license for Maximo Application Suite. So if we go to the next slide, I think I have a little bit on each of these points. So speaking of points, so just an example here, just a little visual to show the pool of application points that are available for use. The worth mentioning that there are 2 licensing models available. So perpetual licenses, as we do today. There's also subscription licenses, which is where a lot of software is moving to the subscription model, where you can just pay for a term, a minimum 12 months, and then renew that term. But there are a lot of questions and considerations here. If I want to say it's comparable to how some of our rules that we have today, if you will. So things like, if I log into multiple environments at the same time, does it take the points multiple times? No. There's, one user, as long as you're logged in as the same user, it just takes that one set. So it doesn't, extend the amount of points that you need for those users. We still have a 0 self-service user that can go in and access things. So I think we continue to publish, FAQs and information, and we'll share with everyone how this all works in detail. Okay, next, we'll go to the next slide. Let's see. Yeah, I think there was a little more explanation of how they're actually consumed, right? So we talk about having different tiers of users that have access to different capabilities. So premium, base, limited, and as I mentioned, there's still the 0 point self-service. So from a managed perspective, when we talk about EAM, you can think of premium as being, for industry solutions, sort of the premium kind of capabilities, as well as some of the add-ons like service provider, ACM and HSE fall under that premium user. A base user is just like getting, the EAM standard access. which we've also collapsed some other capabilities there without charging additional points. Linear calibration, spatial, and scheduler are now just included with those 10 app points, and are also just installed in the system. So besides spatial, which you need to selectively enable, the others are just available. And limited works the same way as it does today with the selection of 3 modules, but it also includes what was previously Express. So for those users who need read-only access or status change, those would require 5 points. And then the other products are also listed here. So monitor is 5 points, health and safety is 10, predict, and the health and predict for utilities, visual inspection are 15. There is still a notion of an install. So for production and non-production, the number of installs that you have, and it's times a multiplier. So for the connectors for SAP and Oracle, which adapters are 80, and those are consumed and held aside, and spatial is 20, and you can see the list of them there. So that's how, an example of how that works. Next slide. So just a bit more on the OpenShift aspects of this. There are a number of capabilities that are delivered as part of the license. So if we look in the bottom left here is what's included is what's called an IBM Cloud Pak for data. And that includes the Watson components, Watson Studio, machine learning discovery, which are used for various aspects. The ML machine learning, I think, is for predict, Studio, discovery. One is for visual inspections and one is for assist. But in any case, a lot of those capabilities. And as we do today, like we bundle WebSphere and DB2, this will allow us to bundle DB2 Warehouse and WAS Liberty, which is what we use with the OpenShift based MAS or application suite. And it also contains the licenses for the OpenShift platform. And so there's a lot of value there in what is delivered. And of course, these are all under the license similar to what we do today, you know, for use with the Maximo application suite only. Next slide, please. Should probably open the chat so I get my the installation. So this just starts to give you a view of what it looks like with the installation. You will see what you have access to. In this particular example, the predict is not installed. So just to reiterate, you know, you can install as many or as few of these applications as you need. You're not required to have them all, but you can imagine now that with the app points, if you have some excess, you've got some capacity there, I'll say, that you might want to look at Monitor as an option and install it on a dev or a test environment and explore a bit without having to go through a long procurement cycle. If we go, and of course now I'm watching the chat and so that distracts me, but I'll answer the question as I'm going, I guess. Is the points requirement based on concurrent users or total users? So it is concurrent users. So once the person is logged out of the system, they return those points to the pool so somebody else can use them. Okay, next slide. I think I've got a couple of things on mobility. Yeah, so this, we want to talk about the user experience and the new design patterns. So there's some examples here, and you'll just see the consistency on the left. There's an example of a mobile screen, and on the right is a dashboard from Monitor. So just, you know, some consistency there, I'll say again, with the colors and fonts and how you navigate it. If we go to the next slide, I have some specific examples of Manage. So this is our work order tracking application, a couple of modifications with the collapsed left-hand navigation. And you can see there's some new icons there that would be represented when the sidebar is collapsed. which I think is nice. In some cases that can, I feel, take up a bit of real estate on the screen when you're already in an app and you're kind of heads down doing your work. And other things have just shifted. So the search navigation in the top right is works the same way as it does today, and just a little bit changed in its orientation. So hopefully you'll see that this is very familiar looking and that the navigation is familiar for those who are on 761, and there shouldn't be a lot of concern or consideration for training or retraining when it comes to using the new UI. Next slide. We also were able to get some enhancement requests that were just kind of how it worked with the new design patterns. And one of them is this anchoring our tabs at the top of the page. And this one we've heard of for some time now, that I'm on a work order and it's a very long form. And when you're scrolled down in it and maybe you're in multiple table windows deep and have things expanded, you stop to pick up the phone and you come back and you're not sure where you are. So this will help orient. That will always be at the top. And if it's scrolled off to the right, you'll see there's some new toggle switches on the end there that allows you to jump directly to the tab that you're looking for. So that is a welcome improvement. Next slide. So in general, well, I'll start with the other new capability. And maybe I should move that text to the other slide when I'm talking about new capabilities, but the table window details. So rather than when you open a row on a table and it comes at the very bottom of the table, this will be embedded right in the location where that row is. So that's another feature that I think improves the way that you can, you know, navigate and work within the table windows. So in general, not a lot of changes. Anything that you had configured in the past, you know, there will still be App Designer. We will still support bringing forward those changes from your current releases. If you had conditional UI, business logic, those will also come forward. You can see on the right that another, you know, change is that we use toggles now instead of checkboxes. So just a minor update. One thing that has changed, there are some properties that we won't be bringing forward, and you'll see if you watch any of the technical presentations, there's a few things that were in the properties file that are now being either managed elsewhere or just aren't options anymore. So in this case, when it comes to UI, this will be the look and feel of 8.4, which comes out in May, and going forward, that we will no longer support that ability to choose a skin from a previous version. So no going back to IoT 18 or previous. No dynamic font size, no vertical labels, no show on toolbar. So those decisions are being made for you, and they will be consistent. Okay, next slide. Just grab a sip here. All right, so the new Maximo Mobile framework. Go back and forth, and this is really an evolution of Anywhere. This is based on the move we made back in, let's see, January, when the middleware dependency was dropped of mobile first, and so we were kind of moving towards our own platform, if you will, and are now putting this new experience on top of the framework with one application, one role-based interface. So opposed to Anywhere, where you had a lot of different, you know, there were 9 different applications that you could choose and install on your device. This is a single navigation panel, and then you'll see cards for the applications and processes that you have access to. There's a notion of an intelligent workflow, or we say follow the blue button, so configurable. So for newer technicians, you can give them a suggestion on what the next best action might be for that record to process it. There is configuration available for the mobile framework today, but it is still a bit, you know, modifying XML based, right? There is some tooling being built around that. I'll say some scaffolding to help do comparisons of the code and check in revisions, and and kind of manage it, and we are continuing to improve it. But I don't want to set the expectation that it's not an app designer like we have for the classic applications, but we are continuing to invest, and it will improve over time. The first two applications for Maximo Mobile is the technician and the offline inspections. So those are, the first to be released, and we have a very aggressive timeline and roadmap to roll out additional applications and interfaces, to get on par with what is available in Anywhere today. So that being said, the Anywhere applications will still be supported in the suite, along with the new Maximo Mobile applications, along with the work centers. And at some point, we see those all becoming this single, Maximo Mobile framework based interfaces. Next slide. I went to move my slide myself. So the other piece, and here, sorry, this was a newer slide. So this is an example of the configuration. So as you can see, it's still XML based to make some of these modifications, but it is within the framework of the application suite. You do have the application list, right? So there is some tooling here and an editing page that we provide, where you can preview it. You can see the buttons there at the bottom, right? I can add my customizations. I can publish these. So it is the start of what will become a more robust ability to configure these apps over time. Okay, next slide. So the other piece that I mentioned is the Maximo Assist capabilities, which powered with some of the Watson AI to help technicians get access to digitized information from their organization. So you can see here, I can either ask through a natural language query, or I might choose to pass information from the work order description, or maybe the asset name and failure code, or some other details, and it will present back to me with percentage of relevance or confidence that this is the information, that this information will help you answer the question. So in this case, looking for the centrifugal pump oil change, I get this troubleshooting guidebook back with a 99% confidence. And when I open that book, it will be open directly to the page, and the passage will be highlighted that's relevant to what I'm looking for. So it's not just, this could be 100-page long PDF, but exactly where in that document I need to be directed. And you can see an example here of all the different kinds of information that could be available. So from anything that's publicly available, like journals and magazines, to my own custom training repository, to my work order history, to the documentation from the manufacturer that I've downloaded and imported, those manuals, so all kinds of data can now be searched and scoured through and presented back in a way that's easy to consume. The other piece here now is collaborate. So in the upper right hand corner of the screenshot, you can see if I haven't found the information that I need, I can then choose to collaborate with a peer and get directly in touch with someone. If I go to the next slide, this will take me now into a collaboration session. So the first thing it will do is ask me, what is it I'm looking for help on? There's usually some choices about, how I've set up my groups of SMEs, whether it's by craft or by asset type. And I can see who might be available. I can reach out to them. Are you willing to join a collaboration session with me? And they're going to jump on here, and I can now share my video stream. So they're seeing what I'm seeing. It's like they're standing next to you, helping you. I'm having trouble with uncoupling the power panel. This model's tricky. You need to do these steps, right? And I can put annotations and arrows. We can talk. We can do text chat. And then be able to solve the problem, hopefully more easily, than if I didn't have any help. The other great thing is that this session now, it can be saved. So as I find, very good, useful sessions, I can save those off, and then they become searchable in the Assist tool as well. I can use them for training. I can, make them part of that assets, records that are available at any time. Okay, next slide. All right, so there's just some overview on upgrade. So, when the time comes, and there's information, I think the most important piece of information on this slide is at the very bottom with the link to the playbook. So this is available. You can access this today. It's a living document. We continue to update it and add to it. But let's just go through some of the highlights here. Really, there's no database changes and no data model changes between 7612 and 8. This will be 8.0 manage in the 8.4 application suite. So there is something to learn and understand about how the numbering of the apps, they will be independently tracked at the app level, as well as at the, the suite will have its own version number. Although we now provide the DB2 warehouse, we would continue to support DB2 Oracle SQL Server databases if you have your own licenses for those. We talked about the modernized user experience, the new mobile experience. We're also getting some improved serviceability items, and this comes through the OpenShift containerization and the platform there. As opposed to today, running in WebSphere or WebLogic, some of those tools and security tools and logging happen outside of the operating system. Oh, didn't they just decide to mow my grass right outside my window? Lovely. So the bigger change here is the technology migration. So OpenShift operators, you need to start to understand how the changes to the installation and deployment and how you configure these environments. Again, this is where things will be, initially more challenging as as with anything new, but the long-term benefits, I believe, will far outweigh that initial hurdle. Some of the security and user management, all of the security and user management has moved to the suite level. So LDAP synchronization, creating new users, because it is done for the suite, and then you give access to the different applications. We're now leveraging the WAS Liberty app server. So there are some considerations there, moving off the WebSphere ND. Some changes with integration and message queue. Now Kafka was introduced in 7612. You can still use JMS if you're doing message queuing, but you need to bring your own license. And we highly recommend that you move to the REST API integration if you're doing RMI, the remote method invocation now. That would be much easier. So again, look at the playbook. Think about, what it is, the considerations for your specific situation, right? And everybody's got their own set of how many integrations, what kinds of customizations, all of those things, as usual, to be considered. Oh, good. I'm glad. Sorry, Michael. Thanks for that. I'm glad the lawn mowing seemed awfully loud to me. Okay, next slide. I gotta love my Bose headsets, I guess. Software that's easier to manage. So, trying to again emphasize, the investment that IBM made in Red Hat was not for nothing, right? There was $35 billion for the leading containerization platform that is available. So we have a roadmap as well for our ability to take advantage and leverage some of those capabilities. The installation and the upgrade, those first two in the wheel here, are really what we're able to do initially, right? So we're taking full advantage of the pods and how you install and manage those environments, right, and configure. Also ability to more easily apply upgrades and patch these systems, right? These are things that I think we've seen some of the challenges with in current environments, right? We've got lots of requests like, we need to make this easier. I need less downtime. I don't want to have to rebuild all these ER files and bring down the system. And, how do I do my testing and roll all of this out, right? So all of these things are going to be important that are made improved. And we eventually are going to even be able to take advantage of other things like life cycle management, disaster recovery, failures, backups, being able to get more analytics and metrics and understand the usage of these bundles and how they're being used, and be able to do better load balancing. I'll say I don't think that's the right term for an OpenShift, but that's what I make a comparison to. So we want to get to a place where we're doing autopilot, where there can be auto tuning of these environments so that they're very stable and accessible, and the performance is at peak at all times. So these are some of the OpenShift benefits that we are hoping to leverage, again, as a roadmap, but with quarterly releases, these will come quicker. Okay, next slide. I've just got a couple minutes. So quarterly releases. So the first release was back in June, 8.0, and really what we've been doing up to this point is just adding different components. So you can see the list kind of getting longer over time. And the May release, which is coming up, 8.4, will be the first instance where manage, again, everything in the Maximo Portfolio, so industry solutions and add-ons being available to install. Now, that being said, I do want to mention there still is this hybrid model or coexistence model that we talk about, where you might want to take a look at the application suite for things like Monitor, Health Predict, or Visual Inspection, one or many of them, but connect it to your 7612 environment as it is today. So we do have customers that are evaluating that kind of deployment, so they can get some application points, start getting comfortable with the environment, with the OpenShift deployment, and still have their Maximo running as it is now, with plans to then move it into the suite and upgrade in the future. I will just note as well, so the new mobile applications and the mobile application framework, a lot of demand for the offline inspections kind of drove us to this support on 7612. So you can also buy some app points and have the mobile applications connected to your 7612 environment without having to install the application suite. So that's an option as well. So we are, taking these considerations. We know that upgrades take time, and regardless of what versions we're moving between, we always know that there's some planning and some investment, and need to really lay all of that out, and we need to work with you to accommodate those kinds of schedules. So I think the last slide then, that begs to ask, so how long do I have, how long can I stay on 761? The current thinking that we're proposing is that we announce end of support for 761 stream in September of 2024 with an effective date in 2025. So that's 4 years from now. And in that time frame, we do see some additional releases of 761, but they'll be fix packs. They'll be more for supporting middleware updates as things, older, we need to support newer versions of, Oracle or browsers or WebSphere, et cetera, as those things become end of support. So that's a bit on the timeline. And the next, I think, is just questions, right? Okay. And I did add a couple of my colleagues. I think, if people, everyone probably has worked with Dave and Lisa, that we're all available to help with questions.
So Kim, we do have a couple of questions that have come up.
Yep.
So one, can you talk about plans for Maximo work centers?
Yep. So he did say there, so polymer is a technology that's no longer supported. So we made the decision, we've moved off onto these graphite carbon based applications, which is the new Maximo mobile platform framework, MAF, the Maximo Application Framework. And I don't see us making improvements to the current work centers. I think all of our eggs are now in the new framework basket, and you'll start to see us roll out new applications there that will support the capabilities that the work centers did. Not that they're deprecated, but again, I don't see improvements being made in the current. Or will it be in Mass only? Yeah, so I don't even see improvements in the work centers being done in the application suite, to be honest. What I see happening over the next 4 or 5 quarters is that you'll start to see the work center, like all the technicians already there, that you'll see supervisor and asset manager and, some of the others, the inspection forms, etc.
Great. And another question, can you talk about a standard BIM viewer integration in Mass 8?
So I would, it's going to be the same as we support today in 7612. Really across the board, the 7612, the work that's being done for 8.0, the Maximo, the managed piece within the suite is really just around getting it there, right? And getting it containerized and taking it, using WAS Liberty and changing the installers and the user management, right? No changes to the functional pieces within 8.4. So the BIM viewer, it'll be, what is there, a standard one for Autodesk, right? I'm going to have to get the names. I'm drawing a blank on what their new web-based, cloud-based viewer is. BIM 360. Thanks. Yes. Oh, BIM 360 is not Autodesk, is it? I thought that was Bentley's.
No, it's Autodesk, Kim.
It is Autodesk. Okay. I get them mixed up. So yeah, so the same integration will be supported.
And speaking of support, talking about the mobile and LDAP, so is Mass also supporting SAML?
Yes, it is. I should probably add that because I get that question. So it's LDAP and SAML. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And then I had a question with the SIST, with a lot of cool features there to be able to interact with knowledgeable people in a real-time
Collaborate.
space.
Yep.
And collaborate. Is there support for VR? Because I remember some of the early demos of HoloLens, which was pretty interesting.
I haven't seen that yet. No, I've just seen the annotation and markup. It may be coming though. I'd have to check with the product manager on that product to see where it is on the roadmap. I see one in here about how to transfer your licenses. So there is a process. There are part numbers, but I would say to work with your sales rep. There are calculators that we've enabled them with that can help you look at what what it converts to from a license perspective. And we also have some technical scripts and guidance that we can provide to help understand your actual current usage and kind of mapping those things together to see how many app points make sense to support your environment.
So within that hybrid model, is there an existing hybrid capability for licensing as well? So if you've got perpetual licensing with 7.6 and you want to add, say, monitor or mobile, which is only available in app points, can that be accomplished without transferring?
Yes, so you can have, you can have the multiple contracts, right? And you might even want to, if you just wanted to do monitor, you could even, perpetual for 7612 and maybe get a subscription license for the app points. Those could coexist as well. So you're not required to convert your current licenses in that case.
Right. Well, if there's any more questions, this is a good time to ask that of Kim, although Kim will be available with our panel discussion talking about upgrades. So if there's any other questions that come up with regards to that, Kim will be available there as well. So thank you, Kim.
All right, thanks.
Bob, away to you.
And thank you very much, Kim and Mike. But Kim, thank you for this essential information that we all need to know sooner or later. So getting a head start on it is very useful, and you really covered a lot of great details. My head is still spinning a little bit too, trying to keep up with it. And I think there's probably going to be more questions. So it is good, Mike, that you mentioned that we'll be seeing Kim a little later in the program.
And so, I think there's a PM for that, Bob, to help with that spinning head thing.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, I got to turn that on. So make it active. Anyway, so now if you've never been to Maximo World, you've not seen what a Maximo user conference can really be. And we've got an opportunity to get some insight into the upcoming Maximo World that's happening in August. And we have with us Terrence O'Hanlon and Maura Abad, that is the driving force behind Maximo World and Reliability Web. We've got a video that we're going to see, and I don't know whether we're going to actually hear from Terry or Maura.
Yep, Bob, we're going to play that video, and then Terrence is going to hop on and say some words. So
wonderful.
Ready? We'll fire this video.
Thank you, John. Please do.
All right, I'd like to welcome Terrence O'Hanlon and Maura Abad from Reliability Web. Terrence, take it away.
Hey, thank you, John, very much. Appreciate it. Every time I watch a video like that shows footage from past Maximo Worlds, it really becomes clear that there is a very vibrant community that exists around the use of Maximo. And it's really a pleasure that we get to, for 4 or 5 days a year, sort of be the vessel for that community, but the community is its own being and its own energy out in the world. And when you see the deep, rich tapestry of the partners, the clients, the subject matter experts, IBM and their executives, it is really quite a deep community when it comes to knowledge and experience. So again, it's a pleasure to be here and get a chance to talk to you about Maximo World. It is an exclusively live, in-person event. Maximo World, if nothing else, is certainly a bold conference, and we're taking a stand that it's time to come back out. It's time to reform the community face-to-face. I do want to say that during the pandemic, the user groups have been nothing short of phenomenal in connecting, keeping that Maximo community vibrant and keeping it connected. Not only did they maintain, I believe that they upped their game, moving almost all their meetings virtually, and allowing the passionate Maximo user community to have a place to continue to share, continue to express, continue to learn. So my hat's off to the user community. I don't think the overall Maximo community would be as vibrant if it wasn't for the work you do. I know a lot of hours go into even producing an event like this. So, generally it's a lot of thankless hours. So I'll say thank you. And we host the user groups on Monday, August 2nd. So if you do belong to a user group, there's 4 or 5 user groups that are hosting in-person meetings at Maximo World. It's at the Walt Disney World property Dolphin Resort, which is run by Marriott. We are following protocols, whatever the current CDC protocols are at the time, not only because that's what we choose to do. The hotel's run by Maximo International or Marriott International. I hope they use Maximo, and it's on the Disney property. So there are requirements from both of those organizations, and we plan to follow those. We've got a really vibrant schedule put together. We've got a keynote by General Motors using Maximo and AI. We've got Dr. Jay Lee from University of Cincinnati's Artificial Intelligence Lab, the author of AI for Industrial. Really great set of keynotes coming. Mott McDonald is going to do a keynote on digitally built America as we start to add infrastructure. And I would say, really what's coming together this year, it's sort of the asset owners and operators that use Maximo. We're getting a lot more infrastructure. I don't know if that has to do with the coming future of infrastructure in America, but a lot of infrastructure this year. The partners have showed up big time. This is really their conference, and it wouldn't happen without the Maximo partners. We're going to have Max Stock. I don't know if you've been there or not. And Bob, thank you very much for the kind words about the conference. One of the highlights is the sort of the underground theme of Maximo World is Max Stock, 3 days of peace, love, and Maximo. And it peaks with a night where we actually have a karaoke band. I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but it's a live karaoke band where you can get up and sing your favorite tune from the I'm not even going to say the years, from whatever era you want to sing the tune from. And the Maximo World audience, it turns out, is pretty darn talented. It's not your typical karaoke night. So anyway, I hope you'll go up to the website, maximoworld.com, take a look around. If it's a personal decision, absolutely, to come out, to travel, to go to events like this. I can assure you we're doing everything we can to make sure it is a respectful event from a health standpoint. And we do understand, that this year the decision is completely personal, whether that's something appropriate for you or not. We're also battling with the fact that, a lot of companies really were not anticipating traveling, so therefore haven't planned or budgeted for travel. But either way, it is going to be a vibrant event. We're there in full force and full spirit. And again, it's an honor to be able to serve the Maximo user community in that way. So I hope we see you in Orlando, August 2nd, really, if you want to come down to the user groups, and the 5th. And we'll have a great time down there. If not, just stay tuned because there'll be great things coming out of that conference. And we will share them liberally with the Maximo community. Thank you for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. And if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Maura. We'll be glad to get them to you right away.
Thank you
you guys.
so much. More about here. I want to say thank you, JFC Associates, for providing the opportunity to give us this space and connect and reconnect. That's the topic of Maximo World. The best thing about Maximo World is that we're going to see you face to face. It is time to see you in person. So this event, as Terrence says, starting on Monday, besides the user groups, we're going to be doing the Certified Reliability Leader Workshop, Certified Maintenance Manager, the Woman in Reliability and Asset Management, Diversity and Inclusion Hackathon. We're going to have different sessions, different events. So it is time to see you. Come and enjoy, and let us know. Meanwhile, if you happen to have any questions, we're going to insert the email if you need any more information about Maximo World. And again, peace, love, and Maximo. See you there.
Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Maura and Terrence. That was great. I did have one question to the group in terms of folks that have attended in the past, and maybe a good question for you, Terrence and Maura, is, I'm a Maximo user. I'm a new Maximo user. You laid out a lot of really great things on why I would want to attend Maximo World, but maybe personalize it a little bit. So if I'm new to Maximo space, what can I kind of expect to experience at one of your events?
Well, we have a couple of things for a new user. One would be there's a dedicated IBM track, which would be really great for a new user. Good for veterans also, but it really lays out a clear picture of what IBM's vision is for Maximo, which is changing substantially in this new 8, in this MAS 8 version of it. And what's really required is, in addition to the excellent software and the application, is you need good strategies to fill that excellent software and capability that comes from Maximo. So you'll get a very clear picture of that from the IBM track. They've got experts coming from all over to really give an A to Z or end-to-end picture of what's possible with Maximo. I am not a Maximo user because I don't use CMMS, but from the people I know, some of them using Maximo for over 25 years, they tell me that there's literally nothing you can't ask the software to do. But what comes with that is you have to know what to ask it. So I think what comes from Maximo is you get that mountaintop from Maximo World, you get that mountaintop view of what's possible. Now then it's your job as the new Maximo user to translate your company's objectives into Maximo. Maximo can do it. You have to be bold enough to know what questions to ask Maximo. And I think what you get at Maximo World is you will get a clear set of what questions you should be asking Maximo, or what tasks, what functions you should be asking Maximo to do for you to achieve your organizational objectives. I think the Maximo community is one of the most sophisticated EAM communities around, in that they are making that connection between the business, because we're in business, everybody's in business, and we need money to run the business, to align to the top level organizational objectives. It's the reason why management deployed the assets to begin with, was to realize the vision of the business. And Maximo allows a span of control to your assets, so that when the context of your business changes, like pandemic to non-pandemic, or non-pandemic to pandemic, or whatever the next crisis is or uncertainty that's coming down, that you have enough span of control of your asset to move it to deliver the organization's objectives. So that's the key. We saw the companies that really thrived in the pandemic, and I don't mean to use that word joyfully or gleefully, but it's good to see that some companies had enough span of control. They had all their assets in Maximo. They had a strategy so that when the pandemic came, whether that caused them to go down or up, they could shift their strategy quite easily. Having that span of control is that's high level territory. And there's not a lot of companies that achieve it, but we see that more and more in the Maximo community. So sorry, that was probably a lot longer answer than you wanted to.
No, it's great.
You got me all excited about it. But it's that A to Z. There's lots of ways you can get work orders out into the world. There's not a lot of ways that you can put together the right strategy to run your company and your assets from A to Z. You know, so if you want to go out and get a, you know, a cheapo little CMMS to chunk out work orders, there's 400 of them out there. But if you want to run your business, you really need an enterprise application that can adapt to your business and what you do to generate value. So that's my spiel, John. Thank you.
Or you had a comment?
From the perspective of what you asked quickly, I just want to say, if you're new into this space and it's the first time at Maximo World, get ready for a lot of information, but it's going to be self-paced as well. The preparation is really important. So in the moment that you register, you're going to have the agenda, you're going to have a lot of takeaways. So in advance, you can start preparing yourself. Something that I do need to tell you, once in the event, one on site, the Reliability Web team will be at every step of the way. If you happen to have any questions, we're going to be guiding you, supporting you in anything that you need. And then be ready to take action, because Reliability Web events, we're known for all the information we will provide will be to act. There is nothing, it's the knowledge part. We are also, besides the knowledge, in the doing and in the being. And that is Maximo World. It's a call for action. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add from a personal experience, having attended a couple of these now, I think the best part about Maxwell World is the people, right? We get an opportunity to interact with our peers in ways that we haven't in a while now. And my favorite time at Maxwell World is breakfast.
11 o'clock.
I can sit at the table and interact with other Maxwell users I may not have an opportunity to meet, and I make it a point to try to sit with people I don't know. So great event from you guys. We really appreciate you guys coming up here today to talk a little bit about it. If folks have questions, please go to reliabilityweb.com. All the information for Maximo World is going to be there. And once again, Terrence and Maura, appreciate your time today.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good luck with the group.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, so it is noon. Maximo World also, the first user event I ever went to was when I was a new Maximo admin, business admin and what was that, 15, 16 years ago, was Maximo World. And it was like, wow, it's this huge buffet of information. And then going more recently, still same thing, even more interesting, more exciting. So if it works for you, it's a great thing. I think everybody should take advantage at some point. So it is break time, and I think we've earned it. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. And now we're going to take a break from 12 to 12:10, and we'll be looking to resume at 12:10. So thank you. And there'll be some information on the screen for about all of our attendees and the companies that they represent. Well, that was a very quick 10 minutes. And hopefully everybody's getting settled back in. I was only able to get through the first 3 courses of my lunch, but save it for later. But welcome back, everyone. Our next presenter, before that presentation about supporting Massport's call center with Maximo, do we have a poll, Michael?
We do.
Please, and I'll plug my earbuds in. Maybe you can hear me better.
And well, and hopefully everybody was able to enjoy it, our little musical interlude. So here's the next poll question. How are your work orders being created in your system? So are you initiating work that you're doing as a service request? Do you have a number of those being created in the office by a supervisor? Maybe perhaps you're using mobile and you're creating new work orders out in the field, or maybe as a follow-up to a PM. And I do believe these are multiple choice this time. So you could be doing all of those. Give you a few more minutes to respond here, or a few more seconds.
Mike, did you mention earlier when we were talking that you could select more than one here? Because I'm not able to.
Yeah, I thought this was set up as a multiple choice as well. Kind of similar to the mobile question. You could be using mobile for a number of things, but you're saying you could only select one?
Yeah, we got quite a few multiple responses. So here are
Okay.
Here are the
Must
results.
be on my end then. Go ahead, Mike. Do you want to speak to these?
Yeah, it looks like you had a pretty even distribution here with creating work orders in the field as new work orders, taking the lead. A lot of supervisors creating work orders in the office. A lot of folks using service requests to initiate the entire process. And still a large number of you not answering.
Okay, well, this is a good lead in to our next topic. And hopefully Willie Hicks and Rebecca, well, Willie Hicks from Massport and a member of the Northeast Maximo User Group Committee, and Rebecca Collier from Cohesive Solutions can help us to understand how they're creating work orders as well as how they're supporting Massport's call center with Maximo. So Rebecca and Willie, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we're I'm Willie Hicks, and we're coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts, at the Logan Airport, and we want to talk to you today and kind of share with you how we track our calls to our call center using Maximo. Next slide. So, as I said, my name's Willie Hicks. I've been with Massport since 2014. I am the Infrastructure Asset Project Manager tasked with implementing Maximo here at Massport. And I'm presenting here today with Rebecca Collier from Cohesive.
I guess it's my turn to introduce myself, now, Willie. Okay. So my name's Rebecca Collier, and I'm from Cohesive Solutions, and now we tack on a Bentley company as part of our name as well. I've been with Cohesive for a little over 12 years, and I've been in the Maximo world a little over 16 years. I cut my Maximo teeth on a DoD project in the aviation world. And then I joined IBM for a bit, and then George called, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And that's how I got to Cohesive. And it's kind of funny when I was listening to Terry talk, it was like he was sort of reading my notes just a little bit on my bio. So I've had the privilege of working across many different industries within the Maximo world, multiple levels of implementation. But I have to admit, and this is where it ties back into Massport, facilities maintenance is my favorite implementation for Maximo. To me, it's like a perfect fit. And the ability to go outside of the box helps drive our presentation today. That's it on my intro, Willie. Back to you.
And I'll just a little bit more about myself. I've been working with Maximo now for over 20 years. I started with the Sensors and Control Division of Texas Instruments up here in Massachusetts. And I've worked discrete manufacturing, and I spent quite a few years with Amgen in the biopharmaceutical field. And so now I'm in transportation, and I'm learning all about construction, because one of the things I've learned about working at the airport is what has been called is a construction site where we land planes. So what we want to do today is we want to talk to you about our call center. And one of the things that's near and dear to me, because I've spent some time as a application developer, is maximizing Maximo. We do look to take advantage of the functionality of Maximo all across Massport, not just with asset management and work order management. I had someone in IT ask me a while back, can we use Maximo to manage our lost and found department? And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? We do inventory. What is lost and found other than inventory? You know what? Let me look into that. But we won't talk about that today. We want to talk more about the call center. So if we can go to the next slide. And the way that we have this broken out is I want to kind of tell you about the application, how we got to where we are, because this isn't something that Cohesive came on board and we did from scratch. This is something that was developed even before I got here. But what we did was we wanted to improve the process and improve the application and the use of it. And so that's what this journey was all about. But I want to tell you a bit about Massport. Massport is an independent public authority, and our mission is to connect Massachusetts and New England to the world in an efficient, safe, and secure fashion. We serve a diverse people here in the Commonwealth, and we're always striving to expand Boston's global reach. And we do that by increasing the number of flights, both nonstop domestic and international from Logan. We take great pride and are committed to being a good neighbor to all who live and work near Massport facilities and strengthening our community engagements efforts. So like we say, we do more than just get planes in the air and ships out to sea. And so I'd like to take a few minutes to share with you the sites or locations that make up Massport. Next slide. Of course, there's Logan Airport. Logan International Airport, I should say. It is the primary airport serving New England, and we're one of the nation's busiest airports, despite being having one of the smallest footprints. And even though we're surrounded by the Boston Harbor on three sides, we make the most of our 1,700 acres area. It's like I say, at Massport, we build up, not out. We have 94 gates and contact jet bridges and 9 regional jet gates at the airport, and more than 40 airlines fly nonstop to more than 100 domestic and international destinations. Our top priority is the safety, security of the millions of passengers who use Logan each year, and then the 17,000 people who work here. To make the airport safer, more secure, and more environmentally friendly, we strive to be a leader in teamwork, collaboration, and new technology. Next slide. We also comprised of the Worcester Regional Airport, and that's located in central Massachusetts. From here, we connect central Mass to the world. The airport offers 5 daily round-trip services through JetBlue, American, Delta Airlines, with connections to over 120 destinations around the globe. We also own and operate the Flint cruise port in Boston, which is the main port of call for ships visiting Boston. The port is located in the beautiful Seaport district of Boston and is bustling with recreation and commerce. And hundreds of thousands of passengers pass through the historic Flint Cruise Port Boston every year as they set off for holiday cruises and to visit Boston as a port of call. Next slide. We're also comprised of the Conley Container Terminal. This one is a container terminal, and it connects New England with the world and it's the only full-service container terminal helping to fuel the New England economy. All the world's leading container ships ship through the Port of Boston, and we move millions of metric tons of cargo each year. And finally, just 20 miles northwest of Boston is the Lawrence G. Hanscom Field, and that's in Bedford, Mass. And Hanscom is the region's largest general aviation airport and is a popular choice for business executives who want easy access to Eastern Massachusetts. Hanscom is also home to private and corporate aircraft of all sizes, and we offer limited commercial services from there. Next slide. So about the business control, business log application is used by our business control department. And they supervise and they monitor computerized facility management systems like the BMS. They respond to various issues in Massport buildings, tunnels, exterior locations. Those issues can be things like fire, smoke, water flow, leaks especially, HVAC, hot, cold calls, electrical issues, and other maintenance needs. They dispatch the appropriate responders when necessary. They monitor responder actions and report and document results when necessary. Next slide. They also can reset alarms and reactivate systems as necessary. They provide centralized communication support for Massport staff, our tenants, state and federal agencies, and contractors during routine and emergency operations. They also log other types of calls and communications they receive. Like, for example, they deal with sick calls, late calls, lunch breaks, FMLAs, and contract services. They monitor energy resource management systems. They monitor metered mechanical equipment. So needless to say, this group fills a vital role in Massport operations and are very busy operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And every call or every communication, whether it's telephone or radio, is entered as a call log entry. Next slide. So the original Lotus building control log, it started out as a rudimentary work order system and was in use for more than 20 years. It was developed in-house, and when it's developed in-house, it can limit support as you're tied to an individual within your company rather than a company outside of you that is going to be around for a while, right? It contained a lot of free-form fields, and I'm sure that everybody who's ever had to deal with any kind of reporting or anything, you know that free-form fields invite inconsistent data. It literally makes reporting very difficult and in some cases impossible. And it also generated paper work orders. That was our first work order system, and like I said, it was rudimentary. And so it was a paper system. We've moved to Maximo now, and we're using Maximo Anywhere as a mobile application. So we were able to get away from the paper system. Next slide. So because the support for Lotus Control Log was ending, a decision was made to explore using Maximo. Initial requirements were pretty straightforward, and a lot of work was to develop and support it was done by the very talented Doug Kingsley and Zakia Main. They're no longer with us, but they are in thought. But they did a lot of really good work on supporting and developing the initial application. The initial requirements were very basic. They were very basic. We just wanted to provide one platform for all building maintenance records. So we configured the service request application within Maximo using the same fields that were used in the Lotus Notes application. And because the IT support was ending, it was important to rapidly train the staff to use the application as quickly as possible. So at the end of the day, using the service request for tracking the calls gave us the opportunity to treat the call log entry like a service request, right? Basically, it was a service request. And this also allowed us to use built-in Maximo functionality to easily create work orders and then to route them to technicians who were now using mobile devices. Next slide. So I saw this on the internet, and if it's on the internet, it has to be true, right? A quote from Einstein says that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. Now, I did see another quote on the internet that Einstein said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I spend 55 minutes asking questions and 5 minutes solving the problem. Now, I know, if it's on the internet, it must be true. So he must have said both. Next slide. And that brought us to revisiting, and this is where we brought in Cohesive. We started to revisit the call log, and what we looked at is what worked. Well, we achieved one system of record. The calls would come in, they would be logged in the service log, in the service request application. When a work order was needed, a work order could be generated, it could be dispatched out to a technician. So we achieved that. What didn't work? Well, because we duplicated Lotus, we found that the free-form fields they created too many points of failure. The users were required to make many decisions based off of the fact that they had to decide things like the classification of the work, who would get the work. They had to make all those decisions, and that led to the point of it taking too long to enter a call record. So what did we learn from it? Well, we learned that the design of the application is a critical factor in the successful use of the application, right? I think that's pretty basic. But we also learned that repeating all the fields in Lotus Notes doesn't necessarily meet the actual need. The mistake was thinking that we were creating something new by creating it exactly the way it was. And that is something that gets us in trouble a lot. And I've seen it a lot. We also learned that creating a simple job aids can be used to assist users. And we found that this improved data input, and it also provides a better return on our training efforts. So Rebecca is now going to take over. I've told you about the application. Rebecca's going to take over, and she's going to let you know how Cohesive helped us to redesign our call center log.
Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. All right, so one of the foundational components, or kind of where we started, was taking a service request, the out-of-the-box service request application, cloning it, and then I'm just going to go with significant changes to it. At its heart and soul, it is still a service request, but we've done a little work to it. And the critical component was standardizing the data collection. So what information are we driving to for reporting purposes, getting consistent information, and that one of the critical factors was how is that call log, how is that control log handled from the time of creation and then out or through the system. And so the first thing was to come up with a very consistent, very easy to train, very easy to think of examples, and to say to yourself, does this fit one of these? Which one of these does this fit? And so an emergency, had to be well-defined, easily and well-defined. Is there, a condition where someone is going to get hurt or has been hurt? Is there a condition where there is interruption to service within the facility? Is there a regulatory issue at play? Is there a potential for destruction on the property? So, pretty easy to go through that decision tree. This call that I'm taking right now, is it an emergency? Does it fit one of these criteria? If so, mark it as an emergency, and then I cannot choose any of the other options. And train to the fact that if it is an emergency, it will go out immediately as a work order to the mobile device with the highest priority. And so there were certain data elements that were required to be populated if you marked the control log as an emergency. Same with urgent, in the fact that it had well-defined parameters, maybe not necessarily a safety issue, but there could be some kind of interruption to service. And a control log marked as urgent would also go out as a work order to the immediately to the mobile device. So a technician had to be assigned as well, but it would have a lower priority value. And then we had what were just requests. So there was no possibility of injury to people or property. There's no regulatory impact. And there are a lot of different control logs that come in this way. They're late calls. So if somebody's going to be late or sick or on a lunch break, you know, at Massport, there's a lot of control of who is on the property, who has left the property. So those kinds of things are tracked in the system, and it go through the building control log. So those kinds of requests were also part of this. And also request identifying an issue that needed to be resolved, but could go through planning and scheduling and did not necessarily involve an emergency or an urgent situation. So getting that well-defined and then using that well-defined set of rules to drive some of the other data elements, some of the other fields were pretty critical. So this was sort of where we started as we started to understand the business use case. Next slide, please. So having those kind of rules understood and defined, well defined, some of the requirements that we worked on was to allow or provide a field that gave a concise classification of the call or the communication. So a limited list that covered all the possibilities. And when I say limited, I think it's somewhere in the realm of somewhere between 30 to 40 values that will type the control log. And then we needed to refine the design so that that it would simplify the ability to, once you've identified that this is an emergency, urgent, or request log, it would help drive to filling out the rest of the form. What fields become required, what fields auto-populate. So we had a lot of rules around what would be required under what circumstances, and then some fields could be auto-populated based on another set of data that would keep driving down the list. And also when are certain fields required. So the identification of the caller, of the tenant, of the contractor, those were all also fields that had rules associated with them. And we'll talk about how we fulfilled those rules using a new table, using some automation scripts, using escalations to drive the rules, driving the fields, using a lot of automated populating. And then once the record was saved, in the original version, once the record was saved, it was frozen. And there's a lot of reasons to freeze those because they are marking a moment in time, but we had to alter those rules just a little bit to allow for additional information to be added to a record once it was saved. So we had some rules that would allow certain fields to be populated after the save, and then others to be locked down. And then just again, using domains to be able to quickly identify the type of call and associated department, which then drove to the auto population of other fields, was a big requirement in how we were going to move the control log forward and update the control log. And I've talked about having the technician identified if it were an emergency or an urgent request that had come in, because that information would automatically feed to a work order that went out to the mobile device. And one of the beauties of having it all in one system is when there is an asset or a location involved, then that would automatically tie that control log, hence the work order, to the proper asset and or location hierarchy, which then leads to better reporting capabilities, because we have both standard information and we have our asset and location information within one application. All right, next slide, please. All right, so some of the things that we did to meet those requirements is the application, and we're going to show a before and after as well. So the application was designed for quickness and correctness. So the fields were very, very carefully thought out as to how they would, in what order they would appear, and then which ones were going to auto-populate based on some other selection chosen earlier, or be driven by domains. We removed all the unnecessary fields. We greatly simplified data entry by checkboxes or use of domain, and also taking away, using workflow, we took away the need for any status changing. So the workflow handled all of the status changes, and then automated a lot of the rules for populating data, which then reduced decision making and helped speed up the process as well. In the original system, the only timestamp was the actual timestamp of the creation of the log. So we allowed editing based on some automation rules. We allowed editing of time and date. If you received the call, we still timestamped when you created the log, but if you had to go back in time, we allowed you to say, well, here's when it was created, but here's when it was received. Here's when the call was received. Again, we did lock some fields at the time of save and allowed others based on rules to be populated as, again, based on the rules associated with the different fields populated. And then another pain point had been having to change the statuses. So certain types of control logs were automatically marked as resolved because they were just informational control logs. Others, once a work order had been created, either automatically or manually, then we used an escalation to mark that control log as submitted. So those were some of the technical configurations that we applied based on their requirements. So let's go to the next slide. Automation scripts. Now, a lot of people, when they hear automation script, they're automatically like, oh, that's, very hard, or can be very complicated. But what we did, and it was one of the guiding rules that Willie liked to enforce, was using automation scripts. What was perfectly acceptable and fine, but let's keep them short and to the point. So all of the automation scripts, I used to tease that even I could understand the automation scripts that were built, and even I built some of the automation scripts. We kept them simple. So making the emergency, urgent, and request flags mutually exclusive, and then requiring technician based on the use of the checking of one of those values was driven by an automation script, short, simple, to the point, making contractor a required field, again, short, simple, to the point, based on the type that was selected, the field would be required. If we also used an automation script to populate work order, the work order based on fields that were populated in the control log. Another a biggie, and this was one that Doug had put into place way before I got there, but to prefix control logs with the CL to flag them as control log, as opposed to service requests, which were also being used. So to keep those delineated, and then locking fields based on rules. I want to take just a second. I keep talking about the rules just to make sure that I go through that the fact that Doug had already built a table that related multiple layers of data to each other, so that if you picked if you populated a value in the type field, it would drive to data being auto-populated in other fields, like contract would be related to a certain department, which would then be related to a certain individual that was a member of a person group. So what I did, though, was take that table, and we did add a few fields to the table, but we also added an application. We built an application on top of the table so that the business could control the table values, could control the rules that that were defined, and that would push towards different behaviors within the automation scripts and the workflow. And then we also added the ability to see what work order had been created for the control log and we did enforce a one-to-one relationship between control log and work order, and identified if a work log had been added to any control log. So both of those pieces of information were available on the list tab, pretty easy to see and to track to. And I think that covered all of the, automation scripts that we used automation script to drive to that behavior within the control log. Those were the automation scripts. So next slide. We also used escalations and workflow. Workflow drove to status updates when the control log was going to go through life cycle. But if it were a control log for someone calling in sick or late or going on lunch break, we used an escalation to resolve the control log after 24 hours, kind of get them out of the pile. And then we also had an escalation that would change the status if someone took the control log and created a work order from it manually, not through the workflow system. There's an escalation that would also go pick up that control log had a work order against it, and then identify it as submitted. And if someone tried to put it back through the workflow, it would stop the workflow processing based on the submitted status. And then we use an extensive amount of domains to, again, standardize the answers and allow for easier reporting. Now, there are, again, work logs and the details fields were still free-form text, but every other field was controlled and standardized. Next slide. So the workflow, a lot of organizations, when they hear workflow, they think, again, it can get very complicated, and it can. They can get very, very complicated with tons of sub-process calls. But keeping with Willie's request to keep it simple, it's basically status changing and routing to the right people was the biggest driver in the workflow creation. And on to the next slide. All right, so here's the big reveal, our big reveal. So the control log went from the Lotus notes to this iteration. And there were some lessons learned here. That's an awful lot of fields to populate when, and most of them had to be individually populated. There was not a lot of driving to automated population in this iteration. So we went from this to, next slide, the after. Cleaned it up a lot, didn't we? We cleaned it up a lot, and we automated a lot of the information, and some of that information was automated and not even made visible because it didn't matter to the user of the control log what that piece of information was. So we only kept visible what they needed to see to make the next decision, and kind of simplified it and put the order of entering the data in a much easier flow. So I get a call, I'm typing out what's being said to me across the caller, what's being said to me across the radio, I'm typing it out. And from that, I glean, is this an emergency? Is it urgent? Is it just a request? And who's making the phone call? Who needs to know about the phone call? And down that line, what's the asset location? And then even further down in the list, some of the sometimes required fields are at the very bottom. So we took the flow of how they actually performed or preferred to perform the actions that needed to go into the application. We took that and gave it. And I have to give Zakia all the credit in lining up the right the right field placement here. Next slide, and I think it's a turnover to Willie. Here you go.
Thanks, Rebecca. And I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things, and that was on the emergency call log. Generally, with the emergency call log, what we instruct the building control personnel to do is to contact the technician immediately. And then, as Rebecca said, they create the work order, and the work order will meet the technician at the point of the issue. But the primary concern in any emergency is to mitigate the emergency situation first, and then they can fill out the work order afterwards. And the beauty of what the control log allows us to do, and doing it in Maximo, it allows us to kind of go full circle with it. We can use it to create service requests, feed the service request back to the control log information, shipping it out to Maximo anywhere. And so we have a full circle of communication with the control log. And the output of that is the reporting. And one of the neat parts about the reporting that we're able to do is that we're able to send supervisors and managers reports on a daily basis on the stuff that they're interested in or that they manage, so that they can see any activity that's happened since their shift ended that they need to be aware of. So it really works out well. They see all the technicians who are calling in late, who are calling in sick. They see any cold calls that came in that they need to address or that may need to be addressed. So it really it gives them a full report of everything that's happened or that's been called in since they left their shift the day before. Next slide. And I think that's it for us. We want to thank you guys so much for your time and for attending and listening to this presentation. If there's any questions, we'll be glad to take them.
Thank you, Willie and Rebecca. Yes, there is a question that's up here. How do you manage your workflow notifications? Did you take steps to minimize unnecessary notifications?
Willie, you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Okay, so we actually had zero emails coming out of the workflow. Everything was geared towards that daily report that Willie indicated, or if it was an emergency, it was a phone call. So at the time of an emergency, or even certain types of urgent calls, the technician or the technician's manager would be contacted immediately. And then all other reporting went through into that report that came out in the morning. So no emails, because they did not want that unnecessary notifications.
And we do have, I personally, I do, and it's just because of my role here, I do get some emails out of the system, very few, but just as an alert to me in the event that there's something that I need to be involved in. But aside from that, we do not, we just didn't want to flood everybody with emails, because they either don't read them, or they read them too late to act on them. But they will come in and look at their report, and the report will have a listing of all the calls that's pertinent to them, and what they may need to address.
I think that's pretty important to reduce that noise so that people don't start ignoring things. That would be
Right.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes white noise after a while, and they don't hear it.
So let's see, a point of clarification. What did you clone to create the control log?
The service request application.
Okay, excellent. And any metrics that you used to report on timing on resolutions based on what type of request?
No, we don't. Well, we do some KPIs on work orders only. So we look at things like, PM compliance, corrective rate maintenance work orders, that kind of stuff. But we really don't track the control log activity itself. Now, what we did was we gave the control log staff the ability to run a report on control log entries for the day. And so what happens sometimes is they get really busy. It's like I said at the beginning, they have so much stuff to do and monitor that sometimes they get busy, and they will take a call and write it down. And then they'll have to put it in later. And like Rebecca said, that was one of the things that we allowed them to do. We hard stamped the time of the entry, but once they put a time that the call had came in and the record is saved, they can't change that anymore either. But so because of that, we try to, and I'm talking and I forgot the question. Sorry.
So metrics used on.
Oh yes.
On timing.
So we don't really try to track any kind of resolution on it, and that goes back to, like, for example, if it's a work order, it falls into the work order KPIs section. If it's not a work order, we automatically mark it as resolved after 24 hours anyway.
So I don't know, as management understands this process a little bit better, they're probably going to see some metrics on that.
They may want to, but they haven't really. I mean, one of the things that they've stressed is they just want to see the things that they need, that they think they may need to react to, because so many of the calls that come in is, for example, somebody will call in that there's a spill on the floor. Well, they'll log it in and they'll log it as a spill, but they don't create a work order. They will call the cleaning crew, and the cleaning crew goes over and they'll clean it up. Well, nobody in facilities wants to see that, because they know that it's being taken care of. At least that's how they felt, at the time. But to your point, there could be a time when they may want KPIs, and should they do that, that's the beauty of putting the prefix on the control log entry and understanding the rules around the resolution, how we resolve them, because it'll make reporting easier. And because we use the domains, generating a report or a KPI on it would be very easy to do if I were ever requested to do that.
Excellent. A couple more questions have come in. So is the non-facilities part of the business using Maximo? And if so, how does that interaction overlap?
Yes, they some of the non-facility groups are using it. Like I mentioned earlier, the cleaning crew, for example, they're not part of the facility group. And then we also have service contractors that will come on and to respond to a call that is not currently being tracked in Maximo. We also will have escort requirements where we'll have someone come on and we'll have to assign a technician to actually escort that person to wherever they need to go. Those are other groups that use I shouldn't say that they use the control log, because they don't. They get notified whenever it's necessary, and then the call gets logged. But from a facility standpoint, they just really track it from a emergency, urgent work order type situation.
So a lot of that is based on criticality?
A lot of that is based on classification.
Okay.
So that was the intent of using the classifications to classify the calls, so that we can very easily identify those that need to go to facilities and versus those that do not. And facilities may, like I said before, they generally will be concerned about work orders that are generated overnight, whether that is like Rebecca said, urgent or an emergency, or whether it's something that broke but it was neither and it needs to be planned and scheduled. That's really what they will focus on.
Now, on the scheduling side, how do you decide what technician is going to be assigned the work order?
So what happens is that we have a fairly small crew at night, and in the evening and night shift, overnight shift. So, for example, if a work order comes in and it's electrical in nature, when they select the fact that it is electrical, they will only see the technicians that are on call at that time to send the work order to. So once they create the work order is automatically routed to that technician.
And I'm just wondering, so are they getting notifications of that in real time?
I can't say 100% of the time, but most of the time they will actually get a phone call along with the work order. Sometimes they'll get the phone call before they get the work order, and by the time they get to where they're going, their work order will be on their tablet. But if
so they are using mobile.
Yes, they are using mobile. Yes.
Okay. So it's not necessarily incorporated into the mobile as that push notification, but they are able to pull that up once they get that phone call.
Once they get that phone call, yes.
Okay. All right. Oh, very good. Well, thank you, Willie and Rebecca. And if there are any more questions that anyone in the audience has regarding this, please do put that in the chat. We will be collecting those and we'll get those addressed subsequent to this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yes, thank you very much. Another very interesting insight into one company's use, one kind of business's use of Maximo. So Willie and Rebecca, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. And that takes us to our final presentation, which is a panel discussion. And this is a subject that should be near and dear to everyone's hearts in this meeting, and that's Maximo upgrades and lessons learned. Did I say dear? Dear to everybody. I don't know about dear. We'll see. But that maybe some of that'll come out. So we've got a great panel with no telling how many upgrades or implementations under their belt if you combine everyone that's on this panel. So and we also have IBM represented with Kim Woodbury. So it'll be myself, George Anilia from Naipa, John Gould from JFC Associates, Willie from Massport, and Kim Woodbury, and then Amy Tatum from Starboard. So here we go.
And I
Let's
think
talk
we
about
have a poll
Maximo
question
upgrades. And
to kick this off.
oh, excellent. And by the way, Michael Nutt from JFC Associates is going to kind of lead the panel and ask us questions. Hopefully we'll have good answers. We'll see what happens.
I'm sure there can be fantastic answers. There's no bad answers, right?
Oh, we've had some bad answers in our upgrades, so I don't know. Is that the
Well,
first
to start it
question?
off-
How many bad answers have you had in your upgrade?
Actually, kind of stealing the thunder a little bit. Just curious, as this poll question, are you planning on or have recently completed an upgrade at Maximo?
Oh.
So are you planning one in the next 6 months? Maybe the next year? Maybe you recently completed one and everything went well. Or maybe you did one and things didn't go so well. So maybe you'll get some good info from the panel here on what to do the next time. Or maybe you just have no plans to upgrade. You're fine operating on Maximo 5.2.
411 was a great stable release. I mean, I gotta say that.
It was. You know, Chief was fantastic in its time too.
So can I ask a question of the question? How do you define upgrade? Is this applying any change to an environment, or is it really moving from like the second digit, 7.0 to 7.1 versus 7611 to 7612? Is that really an upgrade, or is that just applying a fix back?
It's always been a mystery, Kim. Are we upgrading or are we putting in a fix back? I think, the trajectory you guys have had over the years and including more functionality in some of those,
Yeah.
some releases.
Well, that's why I asked, because sometimes it's almost like everything's an upgrade now, and is that what we mean?
Well, it seems like the previous versions, it was that second number after the decimal point that justified a large technical change, but
And
now
then-
760 to 760
is
761.
Yeah.
In my mind, is it a project? Did we have to get capital funding? Is
There
it
you
going
go.
to take months or years
Yeah.
even? That's an upgrade to me. Or an implementation, they go hand in hand.
Right.
So how are we doing on responses there, John?
We're pretty much locked in. About 25% of you are paying attention or participating, I should say.
I've always been optimistic. I always try and shoot for 60%. So come on, people, you can do it.
It's all right. We're in folks lunch hour. I understand.
I think you got to separate how many business partners and non-upgraders are
Absolutely.
here, right?
Absolutely.
Can I answer A, B, and C
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
Right, yeah.
as an implementer?
Sure.
Just not.
And that's actually true for us too. We just did
Yeah.
one. Now we're bringing on other parts of the business. So
Well, one other question too that would be interesting: how many upgrades have people gone through? You bring up 411, Amy. So how many people did 411 to 5 to 6 to 7, and now contemplating application suite?
Now, along with that, I would say, how frequently do you do it? Do people tend to skip a couple? Do you go right from 5 to 7? Did you go from 6.2 to 7.5? Did you,
As soon as the new version is announced, we got to have it.
that's true for some people, but for others, not so much.
Oh,
like
we-
you said,
No,
411
just the
stable,
opposite.
so we're gonna stay there.
When do we
We
have
skipped.
to upgrade? That's the
Right.
way we look at it.
Yeah.
There you go, Bob.
And then when we answer that question now or in the next 2 years, then the next question is which version is current? Which version do we feel comfortable going to at this point? Not the latest out of the box necessarily. Of course, a little different with Maximo than maybe other applications. But
All right. Drum roll. The results. Maybe no results on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I switched to the next poll question already, Mike. Sorry, I had shared those results, but it looked like most of the folks were responding that in the next 6 months, there were plans to upgrade by a large majority. So a lot of folks are looking to make that leap, whether it's to 7612 or to Mass. Be interested to hear folks. If you are one of those folks that indicated in the next 6 months, be good to know what version you're looking to go to.
Yeah. Well, I think so. As we get into this panel discussion, it might be best to just get an understanding from our users on the panel, what their experiences were. So maybe provide just a quick overview of that, and we'll start off with Bob.
Our experience. Oh, you mean with upgrades in my career? Implementations
with Maximo,
and upgrades.
with Maximo.
Right. Maximo. That's it. That's that from IBM, right? That product that they. Yeah. I've been working with Maximo since for about 15, 16 years. Initially as implementer, working on a team, implementing, and became the admin for one particular power plant, and then for all of central operations and so on. We've upgraded. I think in that time, upgrades just maybe 3. I think 5.2 to 7.1, 7.5, 7. Oh, that's 4. 7.6.1. We just finished. I did a presentation about it for the utility mug. If anybody's interested in hearing all about that, let me know when you have about 6 hours, and I can tell you about it. Our 2-year upgrade. And as a matter of fact, we're not done. We've got some post go live things to finish up. But there's that, and so several implementations along the way in there as well, separate from. I don't count as an upgrade, but like an upgrade.
Adding functionality.
So
well,
did you
bringing
have...
on other parts of the business, right? So we have, lots of different businesses within the business of Con Edison. Generation, overhead, transmission, substations, environmental operations, lots of different ones coming along.
Great, thanks, Bob. So George, Ilya, from you guys' perspective at Naipa.
We just implemented Maximo for transportation. That seemed like an upgrade. It took almost as long as Bob's. We had a little COVID pause in there, and quite a regrouping afterwards, and just finished it in February, and still working out a little bit of the training for it. But yeah, it was interesting, I would say.
And again, how long has Naipa been using Maximo?
Over 20 years.
Yeah. So little opportunity to make some changes to it.
Yes.
We got involved with the 5.2 to 7.5 upgrade, so that was a pretty big jump and essentially a re-implementation at that point to go through that many versions and releases and standardizing processes across the sites and everything else. So.
Well, and it's nice to see from. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Willie.
Oh, I was going to say I started with 4.1.1, nice stable application, and then 5.2, and then from there to 7.5 and 7.6.0, and we're currently trying to get everybody on 7.6.1.2. So. And throw transportation in there along with that as well. So we've been pretty busy, and that's just not here. That's with since I've been working with Maximo.
So you also have been using it for quite a while.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to see in Kim's presentation that there's no major shifts in the data structure with the next version update. Because I know there were some major shifts in the past. Those were lots of fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right, excellent. So again, if you've got any questions, this is really to an opportunity to pick the brains of some folks that have quite a bit of experience, that have been through the process, know the pains and the struggles, and also the pleasures of doing it correctly in certain aspects. So. You've got some good guidance here, potentially, with our panel. But we do have a few questions right now. And first one is, so as you've gone through these upgrades, Was it driven by the business, by IT, or both working together? And maybe Bob, we'll start with you.
So thinking about this question, I think about it two different ways. One, the need to upgrade, who drives that? And it's almost always IT for us. And I get that. It's about a comfort level with support from IBM. I think for our company, they're just not comfortable being on an unsupported application. And as a matter of fact, our last upgrade, it took so long to get the upgrade happening that we were in a period where support wasn't there, and we had to make arrangements to retain that support, pay for it basically, until we got on the new version. I'm not sure how that all worked out, but we were supported. But that IT drives the decision to go ahead and do an upgrade project. But once we're doing the project, it's basically a three-pronged leadership, right? The business, IT, and the vendor. And our last project, last upgrade was very big, very complicated. And so at the business, myself as the project manager for the business side, and also overall kind of wrangling, but other people doing that as well. So we work closely, and a lot of the goals, a really important part of the answer to that question is whose goals are being met during the upgrade project. And IT has a lot of important goals, eliminating customizations, that was a big one, but also goals outside of, well, I guess business, but they're in the business, but they're outside the Maximo business leads. And that's like our corporate finance. They had certain goals that they wanted us to meet, and changes in the way we do things financially. So, that's kind of a rambling answer, but that's my answer. I'm sticking with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've hit on a couple of pretty important aspects. So is it IT driven? Is it process driven? Are you doing the upgrade merely to stay in compliance with your business? Or are you using that as an opportunity to add functionality, to add additional users within your organization?
And we do that too, by the way. It's not all like, okay, we're upgrading technically only. No, we have to upgrade around the support. What kind of functionality can we gain here? What kind of improvements can we gain? Like we implemented HSE in this last upgrade. We didn't have that before. And excuse me, we replaced some legacy applications. So there's definitely business drive once we decide to upgrade.
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the big benefits too with the application suite is, as Kim was describing with those app points, you have the ability to kind of test drive some of those added capabilities without going through maybe a full implementation project. You were describing the upgrade. It's basically whatever you can define as a project. Well, maybe there's some ways of utilizing some of those added capabilities like monitor or assist without going through that full project process. I don't know, maybe you have to go through a project to enable that type of functionality. So anyway, George, Ilya, same question to you. How are your upgrades being driven?
I think it's a combination. As Ilya mentioned during our presentation, we are blessed, and I mean blessed, to have a great relationship with IT on the business side. And so I think a lot of those decisions are mutually driven. And kind of like what Bob said, okay, if one side or the other makes the decision, that we've got to go in a certain direction, well, the other side's always looking at, what can we gain? If we're going to have to go through this, what are we going to get out of it? Or what else can we get out of it? And then you add to that the reputation, I'm sorry, well, I just lost the word that I really wanted to use there. Apologize. But yeah, I apologize. You're going to have to move on from me. I can't think of the word I want to use. I apologize.
That's one way to remember it. We move on.
Probably.
Immediately.
I'll be
No,
there
I
in
get
about
stuck.
10
There's
seconds.
that word that I
Yeah.
really want to use, and I'm focused on that. Yeah.
I'll be there in 10 seconds. Trust me.
All right. So Willie, help guide that discussion.
So I think for us it was IT, a lot of it being technically driven. They start moving away from applications or services that would support, like for example, when we were on 411, we were using Citrix and an SQL server database, and so I was a Citrix server administrator, a database administrator. And then when we saw 5.2, we said, oh, well, we got to do this, right? And then it was also the need to move away from paper. It was a big drive to move away from paper. And it's nice because when you go to IT and you say that this is what we want to do, they're all in. They're good with that. So I think that what I've seen is that the technology advances that actually helps facilities be more efficient was a big factor in the decision making. The support, support when support's going away, that's a big decision maker, a big factor, I should say. And then, and when I was at Amgen, it was a matter of compliance, being able to stay in compliance with FDA regulations, where going from 411 going to 5.2 or from 5.2 to 7.5 actually made it easier for us to be able to maintain compliance and be able to show that we were compliant. So I think those were some of the factors that factored in for in my experience.
Yeah, you bring up the pharma area, so systems have to be validated in certain industries. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a really good selling point too, Mike, just to kind of piggyback on some of the things that the user is saying. Given the growth of Maximo as a product, right, and how much more functionality and capability it has, really partnering with your IT department to maybe sunset legacy applications that now Maximo can handle.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so there's some opportunities there if you're the business owner and you're trying to push to get to that latest version. Talking with them about, hey, we can get rid of this one technology. To Willie's point, technology is growing so much and so quickly that you may get some more buy-in. In terms of engaging with your IT department, say, hey, one less application they need to support. You don't need that Citrix administrator anymore. Things like that, where particularly with the managed side of things, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for some of these third-party tools potentially to kind of slide away, but also other third-party tools, particularly in the IoT space, that are going to really start to come to the forefront with this new version. So it's a good opportunity to engage with your IT department if you want to push something. Talk through some of those things with them too.
Yeah, and that's a really good point you bring up, John. So the technology side, using the upgrades as an opportunity to either consolidate as opposed to integrate. So I'm curious, what your experiences have been. Have you used that upgrade cycle to look at consolidation versus integrating?
You're asking me, I'll answer it for you. But I think really where we see, so we work with clients in a variety of different industries, and they're at a variety of different levels in their asset management maturity, right? So understanding where you have an opportunity with an upgrade to look at your business processes as well as your technology stack that supports what you're trying to do. And when you look at things more holistically, a lot of times the challenges are, does an organization have a propensity to take on something that might be big, right? So Bob was talking about all the different groups that you have to bring up in the versioning of Maximo, or the technologies that each of those groups use are very different. How are they interconnected and all those things? I think the upgrade discussion is that opportunity to lay out the framework and the plan. I talk to folks all the time. You have an asset management plan. Do you have a Maximo plan, right? Do you have a roadmap internally for how you're using your systems to support your asset management decisions? So once you start doing that, the folks that take the time and lay out the plan typically have much more successful upgrades. successful implementations. And then I think the other component of it is as well is, we're a big community here. There's a large Maximo community, and guaranteed that there's everyone on this call right now has dealt with something that you may personally having to deal with on your side of your business. So collaborating with your peers, right? Encourage folks all the time to do that. Say, how did you guys do it over at Naipa? How did you do it at Massport? This call log stuff. Hey, we have a call center too. Maybe we need to interact and talk with Willie about that because there's an opportunity there. So getting engaged, having a plan, laying out a strategy, and away you go.
And
Just
if
made
I
me-
could,
Go ahead, George.
I was just going to say, if I could piggyback off of John a little bit, and the word I was looking for was relationship, believe it or not. How awful is that? But you have a relationship with your implementer, and at least for all of my time involved with this at Naipa, we've been working with Starboard, and, it's funny, sometimes you call your implementer to ask them about your business. They know it better than you do sometimes. And, while that may seem a little embarrassing, it's true. You
It's
can't
essential.
remember. It is. I mean, you can't remember everything that you did or why you did it. So you find yourself dialing somebody up like an Amy Tatum and saying, why? I know we did this. Why did we do it? And they have all the background information, and so they help you out. And so all of the implementers that are so supportive of this community, I'm sure they all have the same relationships with their clients. We're blessed with a great one, and so it's nice, and it's a little bit comforting. So you really don't know what direction you should be going, and you can call and ask, and they give you a good reasons as to why you should be doing things and when you should be doing them. So that's all I wanted to add.
Well, also
just to
give you
add to
good
that-
reasons of why you shouldn't do some things.
Yeah.
Just
True.
because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, I think we fall into that category sometimes too.
I think one of the benefits too, working with implementers and partners who do this every day, right? So that's something, that's important from a value added statement, right? We do 20 upgrades a year. Okay. These guys kind of have it down. But the other thing, and to kind of echo your sentiment there, George, on relationships is our relationships with IBM, right? So, we work with Kim, we work with the product team, we understand, maybe not everything behind the curtain, but if we're uncertain, in terms of where you're directionally going with your business, we want to make sure we're setting yourself up for success in the future. So I can ask him. Kim will tell you how many times I've emailed her, hey, when is this coming out? I'm working on an upgrade project. I know that there's going to be some changes. Are we okay here? Right. So leverage that relationship, right?
And I don't always know, but I know who knows. So
Exactly.
Right. I was just thinking on your question, Mike, and on the topic there, for us, the fact that Maximo is an enterprise solution has become much more of a factor in the last upgrade and prior to it. This is, okay, now it's a toolbox. And I think most IT departments want to drive down the number of legacy applications, a number of things that are out there that they have to support. And that makes good sense, right? So if the more and more things are coming out of the Maximo box, then that simplifies things, as long as it's not too much of a square peg in a round hole, of course. Mm-hmm. But I think the configurability has really, really improved as well, so that we can make it into the application we need it to be if we understand that the business need well.
Well, and there has been a focus, like George is describing, the last process they went was adding in transportation. So big focus on industry solutions to problems that customers are having, so that it is focused and taking advantage of that. And now with the application suite, that's all kind of brought in so that you have access to that. Kind of similar to, with transportation, you had HSC and some other functions that were then kind of split off, but now everything's being brought back together again. So I see that as an advantage as well when you're looking at upgrading to the next version.
I'm surprised we have no questions from the audience on this topics. think you guys, you have questions in your mind. Don't be afraid to put them in the chat.
Absolutely. Well, while
Go
we're
ahead,
waiting
Mike.
for questions, so again, talking about technology and kind of flashbacks to the past, using tools to kind of automate some of that process, you know, the migration manager. So how many of you have used tools to assist you in that upgrade process?
We use a tool called Brad. He's an outstanding technician in our implementer. Holy cow! Our data migration was a nightmare. We went from single site to multi-site, and trying to figure out where everything goes was crazy. It got very manual at one point, but I don't know what tools they use though, besides Brad and his great mind.
From our
One for Brad.
perspective, the tools have varied. I mean, if it's a straight up technical upgrade, then the IBM upgrade utilities are perfectly fine and suited for it. It becomes more like, going back to the Naipa upgrade from 5.2 to 7.5. One of the things that happened with that was a complete reworking of all of the location hierarchies and asset structures. So even if you could have just done a straight upgrade, there was so much data manipulation that was required. That all got exported into spreadsheets. It was a very manual process to go through and kind of revalidate and realign things and all of that, and then import it back in. So I think part of that tool set really depends on what are you trying to accomplish. Is it a like for like? Is it a major change? Are you bringing in a lot of additional locations, assets, PMs, job plans? Are you bringing in history, work order? Are you trying to archive anything? Those types of things. And I started to put out a question there, and I want to throw this back out if I can. We've talked a lot about the bringing in of additional functionality and applying a transportation or an HSE, and the fact that, with mass, that should be even easier to be able to kind of try out new applications. But what happens when you bring in an application and you decide later that you don't need it? We've had a lot of clients that at one point in time implemented, say, the ITSM or control desk, or they've implemented transportation, but now their fleet department has been spun off to another entity and they no longer need transportation. And Kim, this may be a question for you, but that's always been a bit of a hole in the IBM roadmap, to me anyway, is once something's installed, getting rid of it is very difficult to do. So how have other people run into that or worked through that issue?
And I see Kim's camera is
Kim's
off.
muted.
Yeah.
No, I'm here. I was waiting to see if anyone could respond about a specific experience, because like you said, we haven't really supported that well in the past, but I would hope that as we move to this application suite where we are encouraging adding things, which also should allow you to more easily take them away.
Yeah.
Right. And as part of that OpenShift deployment and installation capabilities, that we should be able to take advantage of to better support those kinds of scenarios. And I would expect that we would first see it for things outside of our traditional Maximo. So, I put in monitor, but maybe monitor isn't doing what we thought it was going to do, or, whatever the scenario is, that those things maybe could be revoked, I guess, more easily.
More easily peeled away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the
Kim,
only real experience we had relative to some of that is, organization that had smart cloud control desk layered on top of Maximo, and to untangle that web was pretty significant. So
it's pretty bad, I know.
There was an
Done that a few
opportunity
times.
there for an upgrade, and we said, all right, when we upgrade, we're going to do a little more of a clean installation of Maximo, do the database upgrade, and clean and parse.
Well, from what I heard with some of that too, it was more about the IT dependencies, and the upgrade schedules were independent, right? And so to ask them to be out, we're upgrading this weekend and they don't need an upgrade, those kinds of things were causing the split.
So Kim, with with the move to ideally deliver application suite through the cloud, what's the impact of that? So if it's being hosted by IBM, is that all the upgrades managed by IBM at that point?
Right, so there is a managed service that's available to be purchased with the application suite if you want IBM to manage that service. Yep, then we'll handle the upgrades, and I think there is some information out public, out on the website about that service. I could probably get my hands on quickly if we really wanted to look at it.
Kim, Lisa has a whole chart.
Yeah. And I think it's lifted right from the website.
And Mike, Mary Ann had a question, and this is kind of for Kim. Will Mass 8 support WebLogic down the road, or are they going to have to migrate to WebSphere?
No, No, there's no plans now. You'll have to use the OpenShift platform.
Was that Liberty?
That's WAS Liberty, correct.
No, I
So
do
it's
like
not-
the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bob.
I was just gonna, this is just a tangent, but I do like the IT pieces that have come into our conversation today. That I think IT members of the audience can benefit from. And by the way, this is an opportunity right now. So that's what it made me think of that for like the third time today. Hey, that's an IT thing. You know, what you're saying is not in my language, most of it. You know, I'm vaguely aware of it, but we have great IT people who know it. And so I'm happy that we have that content here today. So that's it.
Speaking of moving away from that content, I think, you know, with the time we got left, I think one of the things that we had on our list, Michael, to ask of the group, kind of like a lessons learned part of the discussion, right? So understanding if you had to do it all over again, or what was some gem that you got out of your process that you'd want to relay to other people, right? You know, there's always the standard ones, you know, more time to develop reports, more training, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I think it'd be good to hear from the folks who've been in the trenches a little bit dealing with these upgrades, you know, if there's any specific lessons learned you'd want to share.
I think it's, you know, I think about it from two perspectives. One, there's an implementation, a fresh implementation, right? If you're doing a fresh implementation, one of the pieces of advice that I've given in the past is, if you're a company and you're going to move to Maximo, find yourself a Maximo person that you can bring in that will learn your business, that will be able to speak the Maximo language to the consultants that you bring in. Because like you said, John, is that sometimes you get in there and there are processes they have that you don't know about. And I've seen it in the past where someone will come in, they'll hire a consultant comes in and says, oh, you should do this. And they don't know any better. They say, yeah, okay, do it. And then when the consultant walks out, they're stuck with something that they're trying to figure out, what the heck is this? You know, so that's one. And then the other one is, if I'm doing an upgrade, it's a real good opportunity to reevaluate processes. It's a real good opportunity to say, how can we do, and let's look at what we're doing, process, map out some processes, and look for opportunities to actually improve, to take advantage of some of the new functionality that you're going to be inheriting. We did it with the control log, right? We made a version of the Lotus Notes, and it turns out that that wasn't the most efficient way to go.
Yeah, sometimes it's as much knowing what to do as much as it is knowing what not to do. So
yeah,
it's a good point. What about you, Ilya? You've been quiet over there. Anything you could give some advice on, particularly on all your mobile stuff you've been working on? I know some of the guys personally that you work with over at Naipa, and they say nothing but good things about all the stuff you've done. So let's hear it.
Well, you know, the most important thing is obviously getting the operators accustomed to the software. The training is very important. Making sure that the routes that their questions that are on the forms are specified to their to their understanding. I don't mean to sound like this, but to make sure that the forms have the standard questions and answers, so that way it's very, you know, it's very uniform across all of the sites. And that's one of the important things, and that's how how the APM is being rolled out throughout Naipa right now.
Go ahead, Ilya. It
Go
sounds
ahead,
like there's more you want to say.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'll keep it short. It's a long list of lessons learned, but I think the biggest one, the most important one in hindsight, and that's what it's all about, right? Hindsight is requirements gathering. It's if you think you need to spend 3 weeks in requirements gathering, make it 5, and get it down in writing, not because you don't trust people, but because it can be a long project. That needs to be your touchstone throughout the project. So really good requirements gathering that involves all the stakeholders, as many as you can involve, right? The business that will have to live with it, the people who understand, especially if you're replacing a legacy application, but really get the details, because the temptation is there to punt, to use a football terminology, right? To not really get into the nitty gritty detail. And okay, not nitty gritty, but not get into as many details as you might, or maybe you should, because you might make the assumption, well, we know those details are there, that we know they have to be dealt with, but we're not going to get to that level of granularity. Well, if you do get to that level of granularity, you're in a much better place, because you know the expression, the devil is in the details. And if you don't have the details, then you don't know what's waiting for you in this project. And be prepared to be delayed, be prepared to be up late, be prepared to, do things at times and in ways that you did not want to do if you don't understand the details.
May I add something? This is Rogelio Vargas with the PA. The gentleman that stated requirements to me, that's vital. That's your foundation. And I would go further. What I used to do is draw. I'm a visual guy, so I need to see it rather than just black and white. So, going further and drawing workflows so you can go back to your client and say, look, this is what I captured visually in step by step with all the processes captured in a Visio, just to make sure what you thought, just like that picture, right? What the business analyst thought, what the project manager captured, etc. But what the client wanted was nothing, any of those iterations. So it never hurts to go back to your client. Like you said, if you think 3, plan for 5, that would give you enough cushion to go back to your client and say, this is everything we went through. This is it. Let's go over it one more time and make sure, because this is what we're going to implement based off of this. But thank you for bringing that requirements gathering up.
Yeah, that's a great point, really. I think one of the other components to it is we talk all the time about measuring our work order performance and reactive maintenance versus preventative maintenance, all those KPIs we talk about. You need to have some KPIs for your project too. What is the success criteria for what you're working on? Because that kind of is going to act as your North Star for a lot of the decisions you're making. And then when you're interacting in those requirements gathering sections of your project, is really you need to focus on being able to answer that question that everyone has. What's in it for me? Why are we doing this? And once you start being able to really hit that home with folks, particularly on the staff that are using the tools, it's a lot easier to get those requirements more effectively pulled from them, right? The visualization tools, understanding that, everyone learns differently. So, things like training, having videos, having textual guides, having screenshots with, your information, those are all important. But those fundamentals, starting off with a good project charter is really what I'm alluding to, and, establishing success criteria and who are the stakeholders. And then going from there and being able to work through those requirements components more effectively. So we call it discovery, right? There's the discovery phase, the analysis phase, and the review phase to make sure that those things, to your point, really are lining up. So great point, great comment.
And that also helps to manage those expectations. So setting up that success criteria, you can establish what that baseline is. And once you've actually gone through the process, you can do that analysis of where we were successful where we weren't. And you can't actually understand that unless you kind of define what those expectations are up front. So I'm sorry, George, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to add the word assumption to kind of piggyback off of what Bob was saying earlier. The word assumption is the mother of all evil. During our last implementation with Maximo for transportation, and Amy's laughing over there because how many times did you hear the word, well, I assumed that, and it was everybody. It was my group. It was the transportation group. It was, everybody has assumptions in life, and you get into a project like that and you realize that, you may be assuming certain things that, aren't real in other people's worlds, and the way that they conduct business. And in our case, you add to that, this project was rip-roaring to go, and then we hit COVID, and, we got told to pause. So at the beginning, it was an indefinite pause. It ended up being, I think, 90 days or 120 days, somewhere around 120.
Yeah.
Okay, so 120 days of pause does a lot of things to the calendar. When you're working with a fleet department, where the fall really isn't their busy time, and then you get into winter and early spring, which is incredibly busy for them. And now you can't line people up for training. You can't get decision makers to the table. It just affected, quite a few things that in the end we assumed wouldn't be there. So that word assumption is a train wreck if you're going to use it. So that'd be our lesson learned.
I think that pause affected people's memories as well. So back to Bob's point on documenting requirements, leading up to the pause for COVID, we had been through a lot of requirements workshops and had written the documents and gotten sign off on those, and then just sort of got to a stop point and put the project on a shelf. When we came back 6 months later and started to deliver those requirements for testing, people had changed around a little bit. People had forgotten what somebody else had agreed to 6 months earlier. And we almost had to start over because there was so much of, well, I don't remember that we agreed to that. And that created a lot of turmoil, I would say, as well.
Yeah, and you bring a great point, Amy. When a project gets extended, Naipa is an organization that has a lot of movement. For a bunch of different reasons. So, you have somebody in a role that agrees to a bunch of stuff and, then roles change or new people come in or whatever. And, they look at it through a different magnifying glass and all of a sudden, well, I don't know why they agreed to that, but we absolutely can't do that. Well, what do you mean? We're halfway through this project. What do you mean you can't do that? Or you won't do that or what have you. So that's a very good point. When you have a long project, and I don't know if you, with a 2-year project, Bob, I don't know if you ran into any of this, but we certainly did. And, it is frustrating when you think you got it all locked up and you realize that you don't.
Very much so. And you remind me of, understanding the requirements means understanding the stakeholders and people that you don't immediately interact with. Maybe you don't have an integration with, you don't have to, you don't perceive them as your customer necessarily. They can come out of the woodwork at the wrong time, and they did in our project. 11th hour, hey, we need to, what do you mean you're doing such and such? Like, yeah, you remember that meeting we had a year ago? That was your chance to step up. Well, people aren't going to speak up unless you really force their hand sometimes. So you have to know who has a piece of your project who you might not think does, and sometimes you can't know. But you have to do your best to understand who might throw surprises at you and give them their chance to speak now and then, put you in a better position later when they remember something.
The other thing that I learned in our project is that there are people that are in, can be in fairly high positions that don't know what they don't know. And if you don't do a good job of, asking all the correct questions, and sometimes you don't even know because you don't know their business as well as they know their business. So you don't know sometimes what questions to ask. But, as you said, that at 11th hour, here they come out of the woodwork. Well, what about this and what about that? Well, I don't know. That's not my business. That's your business, you know. And
And
Yeah.
sometimes
think,
they don't know their business as well as you need them to know their business.
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that's true.
I mean, adding to Bob's, that's correct. I mean, the stakeholder identification prior and even during the requirements gathering, because like George said, you know, I would always take lessons learned where I do remember where that individual stakeholder out of nowhere, wait a second, what about this? And then everybody looks at each other and then they ask themselves, yeah, what about that? So incorporating that into your requirements gathering on, you know, throwing that scenario out there. What about, you know, we had a client, this and that, you know, is that applicable here? Because you never know. That might even spark a question. Hey, you know what? We forgot to ask, you know, so and so from this department. Maybe we should bring them in. And I mean, we had one of those during our requirement session with a former client, and that ended up not necessarily redrawing the, you know, everything, but it was a huge process that a lot of them didn't know. It was just one individual who happened to show on the second day, and the question was asked, and I remember he said, yeah, you know, did you guys contact this individual from finance? And they're like, well, no, why? And long story short, that individual ended up being a critical factor in the work order, especially in the GL account capturing process and all their internal codes. So a lot of times using those lessons learned and asking those questions during your requirements gathering sessions, even if it's not applicable, it never hurts just to avoid in the long run those surprises, right? But thank you.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think, you know, and Amy could probably echo the sentiment too, and Jonathan and Kim, you know, the ability to identify stakeholders as well as effectively lead a discovery session is a learned skill, right? It's not something everyone can do effectively. And, you know, sometimes, you know, the hesitancy to bring in a consultancy to assist in these efforts is born out of either funding or, you know, we can do this ourselves. But many times that important component of really knowing how to facilitate requirements gathering, having worked on, you know, multitude of upgrade projects and understanding how typically organizations work from a functional perspective, that's really valuable. So, you know, if you're uncertain at any point in, you know, making decisions on an upgrade or any other, you know, project related work, you know, chat it up, talk to your peers, you know, reach out to the folks that are, you know, on the sponsorship for these types of events, because, you know, we can bring a lot of knowledge to help you facilitate a lot of that stuff. So.
All right, well, I think we are getting close to our end times here. So again, if there are any other questions, feel free to put that in chat and we'll get that addressed after this session. But Bob, any closing remarks you'd like to make at this point, or anybody from the committee?
For the panel, great stuff. I enjoyed it. I hope the audience and everybody else enjoyed it, but I just enjoyed talking shop. This is great.
I know we could probably go another couple hours talking about these things, but we want to respect everyone's time.
Those are good conversations over a beer at a live event. So let's work towards that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's hope to see everybody in Orlando. Yes.
Or maybe somewhere in the Northeast in the fall.
Yeah.
It's a good segue, Bob.
Really
I've
good
heard
segue.
there's some rumor of some kind about that. I heard something.
Yeah.
Well done.
There may be even a poll question related to that.
Oh, hey, that'd be good. Or maybe a check question. No,
What do you know? There's a poll.
Hey, look at that.
So speaking about in person, getting back together, I think everybody is ready for that. You know, not that these virtual webinars aren't fantastic, but it would be nice to be face to face with people again, in my opinion. So what's your opinion?
Absolutely.
Would you be interested? in a fall event this year for the Northeast Mug. Location to be determined, but somewhere within the Northeast area. And if you were interested in doing that, what month would that be? September, October, November, to December. And since the location is yet to be determined, if you are interested in hosting, would you be able to? Would you be interested in doing that as part of your organization? And if you are, let us know. We have time. And generally, 75, probably no more than 100 people. I think that's about the size of attendance that we've had in the past for these groups. But you know, this is a combined group now, so it may be a little higher. You never know. That would be wonderful to get more people together, more interaction, more collaborating, more sharing of information. That's what we're all about. All right.
So we're going to leave this poll open, and Bob, if you want to kind of bring us home here, and we'll get through these last few slides. And
Absolutely. So, so thank you, as always, to everyone who participated today. Thank you to our panelists in our last presentation. I thought that was excellent. I hope we have more panels going forward. And I'd love to know what the folks watching and listening thought as well. But anyway, thank you very much. And I like the mix too. I like the fact that we heard from vendors and Maximo users, asset owners. I thought that was a very healthy way to look at things. So that was great. And in general, it's been a great day, and a great 4 hours, I should say. Not a whole day, only 4 hours. And I thought we made good use of our time. Could you flip to the next slide, please, John? And so it really is key that we have sponsors to make this possible. And especially as we return to in-person events, in-person meetings, even more so. So, you know, we're all longing to have an in-person meeting again and enjoy the interactions that happen there. Those things even more so are only possible through the generous support of our sponsors. And our sponsors on the screen here right now, it occurred to me looking at these groups or these companies: Cohesive, Interlock, Microdesk, Prometheus Group, Starboard, all very experienced in this area. And you know, talking about upgrades and who to bring in to do your Maximo upgrade, I think it's great to have someone who's done so many upgrades. They focus on Maximo. They know Maximo. Maximo's their thing. I think that's really key. And we have a lot of that here on the screen right now. So thank you very much to our sponsors, and especially to JFC and Associates, John Cannell, John Gould, Michael Nutt, and Bill Thompson, who's no longer with them, but has lent a lot of support in this group as well, has moved on to another company. But JFC really over and above the call to help make this possible. So really appreciate it. And John and Michael, thank you for all your work today for this to go the way it did. Very well. And so looking ahead, we've got our poll question there, thinking about the fall. I think it's very possible that we will meet in person. We have some ideas. We don't want to really say where or what yet, especially we want to hear from you guys first. But some of the things we've thrown around have sounded pretty nice. Kind of curious where people would like to meet too. You know, in the past we've met in urban settings. Maybe people would like us more of a rural setting or a country or suburban and so on. So those are thoughts, things to think about. You'll see contact information on the last slide. Feel free to let us know what your thoughts are on that. Think about what you can share, what you can contribute to this community, right? Because I hope that everyone has gotten a few great points out of the day and many other points, and a more well-rounded understanding of Maximo its use, living with it, implementing it, upgrading it, and all that. So it's a symbiotic relationship, right? So we all gain from it, but we need to contribute to it too. And it only gets better if you contribute to it, right? Because you have a special insight that no one else has. So please think about what you can share. And if you think about something today that you could share for the fall, tell us today. We will absolutely remind you what you told us, because we always want good presentations and fresh presentations. We don't want to see, Bob on the screen all the time. I love to do this and to support it and participate, but we want to see you. So please think about what you could share and some topics that you'd like to hear about. Your feedback is absolutely welcome. Really, it can only make us better. So tell us what you think we could do differently, what we could do better, and anything that comes to mind. This would have worked better if it was this or that. The virtual format, if we have to do it again, tell us how we can do better. When we meet in person, you have some insights from your company on their policies and what's happening there, because it's in flux right now, right? Companies are coming out of the woodwork, so to speak, on what the future will be in person. So any kind of feedback you have, please use that contact information that you'll see in a moment and let us know. So finally, thank you all for attending, for being here. It wouldn't make much sense for us all to present if you weren't here. And I honestly feel like this is a meeting of all of us, right? And I think that's the best way to have something like this, to have interaction and just all be together. Is there anything else from anybody on the committee or from John or Michael that I need to add that I left out? Okay, well,
I think you
thanks
hit it.
again. Great. Well, and we'll see you all in the fall, one way or another, if not before. And I encourage you to reach out to each other, all of us, you to us, you to other members of the Northeast Mug, and let's support each other. Let's make each other better throughout the year, because that's the way it should work, right? That connection that we're making. This is our chance to build that community day to day. And because like I said, I love the talk shop. I think most of us do. And as a matter of fact, I've got a call tomorrow with a city in California who wants help with something they're doing. I love doing that. And I think we all do. So let's make each other better and connect. So thanks again. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you soon.